Okay. Chairperson DeGiorgio, you are live on YouTube, so the meeting's all yours.
Great, thank you. Call this meeting to order. As Jeff said earlier, I want to remind all the commissioners that anytime we have a vote, we're going to do a roll call vote, including at the start of this meeting. So let's just let's have a roll call. Would the commissioners please introduce yourselves? Starting with, I'll go from on my screen from counterclockwise. Dick, do you want to start? You're muted. Commissioners can unmute themselves if they want.
Sorry about that. Commissioner Craig, present.
All right. Greg?
Hi, Commissioner Brown, present.
Stella?
Commissioner Stella Weatherspoon, present.
Great. Gail?
Commissioner Gail Taylor, present.
Great. Lynn, are you able to speak? We still don't have, we still don't hear Lynn's audio, even though she says it's signed on. So hopefully.
There is one, sorry for the interruption.
Yep.
There is one phone number that called in.
Yep.
It ends in 487. If that is Lynn calling in, hit *9 to raise your hand and I'll move you into the meeting. If it's not, just stand by and we'll get you in the meeting. But if it is Lynn Hadane with the telephone number ending in 487, please hit *9 now.
That is her number, I think.
That is her number?
I believe so.
All right, well then let me try and move her in and we'll see. She did not raise her hand, but.
Lynn, are you there?
Okay, I'm trying to unmute her.
Hello, Lynn, are you there?
Well, I think she's having some technical difficulties.
Okay.
I'm not able to unmute her on this end for some reason.
All right. Vianney, can you hear us? Can you speak? You're on mute. That's what I see. Jeff, are you able to turn Vianney's mute off?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not able to. Let me see something here. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's happening. I've unmuted it. Well, there's Lynn talking.
I think Lynn's coming through on her computer, maybe.
Jeff, I just got a message that you wanted to unmute me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
I unmuted everybody, but
Okay.
Vianney is not responding. So I'm going to move.
Yep.
Okay, let me just do something here. Sorry, guys. This kind of happens the first time sometimes. Yeah, I don't know what this number is. So these are going back in too. Okay, Vianney's back in, so hopefully they can unmute.
So Vianney, if you can push the unmute button on your screen, if you can get to that, give that a try. And if not, Mike, I have a question. Does the 4 commissioners that have 5 that have responded, I think that constitutes a quorum. And so
it does constitute a quorum. It would, of course, be better, since we seem to have these commissioners that are trying to participate, if we could,
work it
get
out.
some semblance of their participation. But it does constitute a quorum.
That's right. All right. If Lynn or Vianney can hear us, they're welcome to try and call my cell phone, or and we'll see if we can give them a telephone number at that point. So let's just let's move on just for now. First item, or item number 3 on the agenda, adoption of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes? And if not, would somebody move to adopt the agenda?
I'll so move.
Second.
Does anybody have any changes? Okay, then let's do a roll call vote. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to announce myself also to the meeting. I'm Carl DiGiorgio. I'll serve as chair for this meeting. So the roll call on adopting the agenda, Greg. Oh, there's Vianney.
Approved.
Okay. Let's pause for a second. Hi, Vianney, can you hear us? I cannot hear you. You need to push your unmute yourself if you can. He seems to have been frozen. Hi.
So Vianney, we can see him. It's possible he does not have audio. I don't know what he's using because it doesn't show him muted.
If he has low bandwidth, he could have frozen out or it won't do it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn off his video. Maybe that will start his audio up and we shall see. But it looks like he's kind of frozen there.
Yeah. See if you can see this. Okay, and just in case he sees that. All right, let's continue. I'm gonna let's go back and restart this. The motion is to adopt the agenda. We've had first and second, and also Dick, would you please start again with the voting?
Yeah, I approve.
And the form, that's good. Greg?
Approved.
Stella?
Approved.
Gail?
Approve.
Okay, and I also agree. So the motion passes with several. Oh, one moment, please. Hi, Lynn. Excuse me, Jeff. Lynn is on the phone, and she says she cannot. She had called in, but cannot. The audio is muted, so there was.
Yeah, I don't know. I tried to unmute it. Doesn't seem to be responding.
All right.
I mean, there's another thing you could do, Carl, if you want. You can put her on the speakerphone right there next to you and just let her participate that way. You know, when we do a voice vote, you'll just have to indicate that it's Lynn speaking, but you could just leave her on your speakerphone right there. But you're using a headset, I think, aren't you?
That's right.
Oh boy.
Well, let me hold on a second. 1 second. Hey, Lynn. Do you have audio? I can hear an echo. So you can hear, but we just can't hear you, right? Okay. So I tell you, so what? Okay. One second. Jeff?
Yep.
She in the I don't see her on the telephone. She just said that she pushed unmute.
No, let's see.
Let's see.
She's there's something here that says Lynn Hedane in the
Yeah.
meeting. I don't know what that is.
Lynn. Okay, so why don't, I'll tell you what, let's change this. Why don't you mute your computer? I was going to try and put you on speakerphone, but I don't think, I think we're going to have echo problems. Okay, yeah. You just click the same button. Yeah.
It looks like she just muted herself, so she's doing something.
Yeah, you just muted it, so yes.
Tell her to speak now.
Try to speak into the microphone of your computer. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Here's my suggestion. Here's my suggestion. Hang up on the computer and then dial back in on the telephone and see if Jeff can get you in.
Try that.
The Zoom call, you just close the Zoom window. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, we're going to go, but why don't you try this? Go ahead and dial back in on the telephone, and we'll see if we can get Jeff to join you by audio. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. I
right,
think you
sorry.
do have a quorum, so
Yes. We're going to keep going. So sorry about that. So let's get to so the agenda's been adopted. Let's go to public comments. Do we have people in the audience that want to speak about items that are not on the agenda?
Okay, we do have one hand raised. I just want to remind folks that this is for public comment on items, as Carl said, that are not on the agenda. So if you wish to speak about a non-agenda item, go ahead and raise your hand now. Use the raise hand function, or hit *9 if you are phoning in. So we have one hand up, and that is Richard Fateman, who will be joining. Oh, we have two hands up now. If everyone could raise their hand at one time, it'll give us a really good idea of how many folks we do have for public comment at this point. So the first speaker will be Richard Fateman, who's joining the meeting now. Hey, Richard Fateman, you're in the meeting, so if you could unmute yourself. Well, it's not Richard.
Hi, this is Abby, Richard's daughter.
Okay.
Sorry,
Hi.
my father
Abby.
was using my Zoom account, so it could have been a lot worse than my dad, I suppose. So you can hear me? Great. Hi, my name is Abby Fateman. I'm a 10-year resident of Burton Valley. I live on Michael Lane. And I have been a commissioner on the Parks, Trails, Recreation Commission, the Creeks Committee, and was a very active member of my neighborhood NAT when that was active 8 years ago. And I tell you this for context so that you understand that I am somebody who's committed to this community, has volunteered time and evenings working on issues to improve our community and find solutions. And so that I'm not unfamiliar with the city process, and I am not a newcomer to trying to engage to make my community better. The topic that I want to speak to is related to the other topics that are on this agenda, but it is different. And that is neighborhood safety and safety on the streets. I am concerned that, especially with the backdrop of the pandemic, we have seen a change in how our streets are being used. I realize in March we might not have anticipated that we would be doing this all summer and into the fall, but we are. So it is too late to be proactive for the summertime, but we can be proactive in looking at things now. And that is really looking at the makeup of our streets and what we're seeing. And we're seeing a lot more people walking on streets. we're seeing a lot more people riding bikes and kids riding bikes on streets at times that are not normal, not just before school and after school, but all day long, we see this happening. We also see a different makeup of the vehicles on our streets. So we see more delivery trucks going through our streets, more UPS and FedEx trucks, and fewer people commuting in the evening and the morning. And so this is an opportunity for us to change and pivot how we are actually looking at what is going on our streets. And I would encourage this committee, and whether it's also working with the Safety Commission or the Police Commission or neighborhoods, to start looking at how do we address this issue globally across the city, and not just in Burton Valley. And I'm talking about this just because there was a horrific incident that has shaken to the core everyone in Burton Valley and probably in the city as well. I'm talking about this as an opportunity. We would probably most likely like to see this type of activity continue post-pandemic. We want people to be walking. We want people to be using the streets. And how do we create streets that are really multimodal and that are safe, not only for the people who are walking and riding bikes, but really for the drivers too, because now there's this unpredicted and unprotected group that is using the streets. So I would like to challenge this commission to take action sooner than later, to start brainstorming whether it is starting a public education campaign, which would be a very low bar of something to do, to something much more dramatic, like re-envision our streets that were engineered 50 plus years ago for a different type of vehicle and a different type of use. And I think that's really what needs to happen across the city. I understand that there's a study coming out.
Excuse me, Abby, your 3 minutes are up.
Oh, really? I have so much more to say. It's really good too. Anyway.
Abby, would you please just continue for another 30 seconds so you finish your thought, please?
Yeah, sure. So my thought really is, and I'll abbreviate this much more, is that, there's a study coming out from UC Berkeley. I don't think we need to wait for a study to come out to do some of the easy things for the low bars and even, for the harder things too. But really, I would like, when the study comes out, for there to be a presentation, for there to be a timeline associated with actions that we need to take as a community. And I think there needs to be a staff person assigned who's a point person responsible, not general engineering or general public works. So I'd like to see staff responsibility, timelines, and presentations and accountability to the community. So thank you, and I appreciate the extra 30, 40 seconds.
Hold on. Now,
I can't leave?
No, wait. Do any members of the commission have questions for Abby? I don't see any hands raised.
Chair DeGiorgio, thank you, Abby. I appreciate the input and comments. I don't have questions, but I would certainly, invite you to, share specifically any ideas, thoughts, comments, tangible things that you have with this committee. I think that would be great. As well as any reference to the study you mentioned.
Sure, and I absolutely think there are a group of people that are talking about a list of asks, and I think myself and perhaps others will be coming back to you to talk about those, and some of them may overlap with the UC Berkeley study, and some might be different, but I know there's a lot of knowledge in the community and ideas in the community, and I'm sure there are also ideas from commissioners, but I'd like to see things move forward faster than slower, just because I feel like the moment is here.
All right. And I also thank you. Any other commissioners? I also want to say I also appreciate your comments, and also thank you for the comments that you provided at the City Council meeting on August 10th. We're not specifically having that incident on our agenda, but I heard you and the other speakers at that meeting, and I was going to publicize that during the commissioner's oral report section. So, but thank you again for your comments.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the work you guys do. I look forward to working with you.
Okay, Chair DeGiorgio, we have another speaker, and that is Megan Mittman, who will be joining the meeting now.
Good evening. Thank you all so much for the time that you commit to our city. I know that it's a lot of dedication and commitment, and I really appreciate everything that you all do. My name's Megan Mittman. I live on Marywood Drive, right in front of Burton Valley Elementary, and I was also one of the speakers at the City Council that you mentioned the other night. I'm the mom to 2 virtual 3rd grade girls. I do have comments on both Eric's and Mike's agenda items, so I'll save those for later. But specifically, I'd like to urge you separately from that to push for action after you do hear the results from the UC Berkeley Safe Track Complete Streets assessment that's going to be coming up in the next month or so. We have pivoted that at my request to also include Burton Valley after we did have the very sad fatality with Leo in our neighborhood. He died right in front of my house. My 2 little girls had to see him being given CPR. And I'm a ped bike safety expert. And so it's incredibly ironic and sad and motivating for me to personally be engaged because I've made a commitment to my children to continue to stay focused on this topic. So that's what I'm speaking on tonight. There are some really easy, visible, immediate actions that we can take to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety in Burton Valley that can also be very COVID urgent, that can provide socially distanced, safe places for people to be walking and exercising and bicycling right now during the pandemic, and can provide a way that we can do public outreach while we do that. Rather than doing the public outreach, doing a big study, and then doing something, we can do a quick build implementation effort where we get the public outreach as we're doing a test study. And I've been working with Mike. There's options that are on the table, and I would really encourage you to take action. I imagine those will be recommended and reinforced by the UC Berkeley study. It has so often been left to citizens to battle with their neighbors to make a case that safety concerns are real in Burton Valley and across the city. And it's time to really show more commitment and encourage to do those things that are right rather than leaving them and expressing relief when the neighbors finally feel beaten down and walk away from them, and to do something that's in Leo's memory and that supports the overall vision and dedication that I think we have to pedestrian safety, to livability and walkability in our neighborhoods. It's the way to really show Lafayette the love. And I really urge you to take action and not just do more studies and more policies, but actual visible things. And I'd be happy to partner with you on that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any commissioner comments or questions? Thank you, Megan, and I appreciate you joining us and giving us that information. And we look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Likewise.
Jeff, are there any more speakers?
No, not at this time, Mr. Chairman. So you can proceed with the agenda. No hands are raised.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 5A, the new business. This is the item, the General Plan Advisory Committee. Mike, would you please take us through your staff report?
So actually, this is Jonathan Fox,
Hi.
Assistant Planner Jonathan Fox, and he will lead you through the staff report and the request for one of the commissioners to be part of this ongoing general plan committee.
My apologies, Jonathan. I'm so used to saying Mike. Would you? Okay.
No worries, of course. It's my pleasure. So let me share my screen with you. So I'll do a brief presentation on the general plan and then end with the ask that is for the Transit Commission to nominate one of its own to GPAC. So first of all, thanks for having me here. I'm Jonathan Fox with the Planning Department, and it's great to present before you for the first time. Usually it's the Planning Commission or Design Review Commission, but it's great to present before this body today, and especially to talk about a big project like the one we have in front of us, which is General Plan 2040. So we'll go over the staff involved, an overview of what the general plan is. We'll talk about what we're here to talk about today. It's the General Plan Advisory Committee. We'll look at some draft timelines and then end with a recommendation. So the staff involved, of course, we have Greg Wolf, our Planning and Building Director, and Diana Elrod, our Housing Consultant. They're working on specifically the housing portion of the general plan. That aspect needs to be worked on separately because it's the only state required element to be reviewed and approved by the state. So they're working on the housing element, and then more broadly on the general plan as a whole, we have the core four, as we're calling ourselves, Nancy Tran, Renato Robles, myself, and Sarah Allen. So if you have any questions in the future about the general plan, feel free to contact any of the core four. So the general plan is required by the state, but also it's just a great opportunity to address one of the city council's goals, and that's to develop and define the city's core values and corresponding key elements that represents Lafayette's character. So what is a general plan? The technical answer is it is the city's leading development policy document. It's a document that will include policies, programs, and goals to which will guide development in the city for the next 20 years on private property and public property. It's a state required document that needs to be updated every 20 years. It was last updated in 2002. We're now in 2020 and looking towards 2040. The more abstract way of looking at it is it's a great opportunity for the city to come together and talk about what makes Lafayette Lafayette currently, and to talk about the future of how we want the city to look, feel, and to be experienced. So yes, the public is a huge portion of that. The general plan needs public participation in order to be valid. So that's something that we'll be pushing heavily towards, is getting the public involved as much as possible. As you can see by the inverted pyramid, they are the biggest part of the process. Just underneath that is the General Plan Advisory Committee. It's a smaller group of members, volunteers from the public that will be guiding the process and leading the process, to lead the discussion during those meetings, to take in those public comments from our participants, and to form policy recommendations for our higher hearing bodies. And then finally, we have the council, who is ultimately responsible for approving the general plan. So today's main topic is the General Plan Advisory Committee. Again, it's the leading body on the general plan. The City Council, in their meeting last week, established that that GPAC, General Plan, which is short for General Plan Advisory Committee, is to be composed of 11 members, part of which is to be nominees from our existing institutions, so our major commissions and the Chamber of Commerce, and then the other half is to be selected through a lottery system representing the 4 areas of Lafayette. So that's why we're here today, is to have the Transportation Circulation nominate one of their own to GPAC. We went over the responsibilities, but the expectations are that the GPAC member is to attend all meetings. It's expected that we'll have 1 meeting a month at least. That could go up, that could go down depending on the number of special events we have, but it's safe to say 1 meeting a month for the next 4 or 5 years or so. So it is a time commitment. That's really important to keep in mind before you volunteer, is that it is a time commitment. It's a long-term project, and right now we're looking to final adoption somewhere around in 2025. Also, part of expectations is those meetings will be reoccurring and at a set date, day of the week, and a set time of day that will be selected once GPAC is formed in October, so that we can come to a date and time that works for everyone's schedule. So a lot more to be worked on. Right now, we're looking for nominations from those who are interested. So for the timeline, we are currently in the green area, where in July, staff began looking at our existing general plan that was last updated in 2002 and looking for areas that could be approved upon. We've been having weekly meetings. We've been seeking direction from the Planning Commission and the City Council. And also we are starting the recruitment of GPAC. So last year we had our first member, first out of the 11 is Carol Singer from the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Commission. And tonight we're looking to get our second member. And then looking out, again, more broadly, first we need to work on state required elements, which is the AB 2923 compliance for updating our zoning ordinance to reflect the upzoning that's going to happen on our BART properties, increasing the density around there. We'll be working on submitting the housing element to the state for review. And then the last item, again, looking towards about 2025 is final adoption of the general plan. And finally, our recommendation is for the transportation circulation to nominate one of their own to GPAC. Thanks for listening, and here for any questions.
I know I've got questions, but let's start with other commissioners. Other commissioners have questions? Okay. My question then is, and people can interrupt me if you have questions. The commissioners have a fixed time where they expire, their term expires, and then they may or may not rejoin the commission. What's the process if somebody joins and then their term expires and they don't stay on the Transportation Commission?
That's a good question. We don't have the process built in yet, and that's something that we want the commission to be conscious about, is that it's a long-term project. I expect, since the representatives to be representing that commission, that if the torch needs to be passed down, it would go to someone that's on the existing commission when that commissioner leaves.
Okay. Then has the city council liaison been decided yet?
Yes, that will be, city council is Teresa Geringer with Vice Mayor Kendall as an alternate.
Okay. And that led to my other question is, would it be okay if one person is on this, would we appoint an alternate, or would that just be an ad hoc decision? Like if someone had to, say there's an emergency or something, can one of the other commissioners attend as an alternate?
Another good question. We haven't considered alternates yet. And that's something that also came up in PTR commission last week. Today, I would stick with just the one nominee.
Okay. So let's take a straw poll. Are there commissioners that have interest in serving on this General Plan Advisory Committee? I know that Lynn had talked about what she had gone through the process many years ago. So any thoughts? Anybody that would like to serve in that kind of a capacity?
Lynn.
Sorry, Vianney?
I said, about Lynn, would you like to do it again?
Unfortunately, he's not on the meeting right now.
Oh.
Yeah.
I do have her in the meeting on the telephone. However, for some reason, she is not able to unmute, and I cannot unmute her, but I believe she can hear this. So
okay.
I'll try it again, but there's just something going on with her line that I can't unmute it. So sorry about that.
Okay.
All right, Carl.
Yeah, Dick.
I'm open for it. If others agree it's appropriate, if there's certainly one of the more experienced commissioners that's interested, though I'm not going to dig my heels in or anything, and would certainly defer.
I think you've got plenty of experience, but that's. Anybody else want to raise their hand or thoughts?
No, I will pass.
Okay. All right, then would somebody nominate Dick to be the Transportation and Circulation Commission's representative to the GPAC?
I do. I nominate Dick.
That's Vianney, and then
yes.
A second?
Second.
By Greg. All right, then we're going to do a roll call vote because of the nature of our meeting. I'll just read down my list. Greg?
Approve.
Okay. Dick?
Approve.
Okay. Gail?
Approve.
And Stella?
Approve.
And Vianney, did you?
Approved.
Okay. And Lynn, she's unable to hear her. I also agree. And so that passes.
Good.
Thank you, Dick. I think that's going to be, it's a very important process. And I think that we'll all want to keep in touch
absolutely.
on
Yes.
Yeah, we're on the report.
Look forward to everybody's support.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I'll do everything to keep everybody's informed as I can.
Yeah, and when your process is decided, then please get back to us on rules for alternates. Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, it's mission control here.
Yes.
And just wondering if you might want to ask for any public comment on this item.
Oh.
Yeah. So
sorry.
Yeah. So go ahead and ask, and then I'll give people the directions.
Thank you very much. Is there any public comment on this item on our agenda?
Those of you who'd like to make a public comment can use the raise your hand function. It should be at the bottom of your screen. If you're joining by telephone, and it looks like we lost Lynn on telephone, speaking of that for some reason. But if you would like to comment on this, just use the raise your hand function. And with that, Mr. Chair, there are no hands raised.
My apologies, and thank you very much for helping out with that. Thank you again, Dick, and thank you, Jonathan, for your presentation. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioners, and Commissioner Gregg. Look forward to working with you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, let's talk. Let's go to the item 5B, which is Eric Law's presentation. Hi, Eric.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Carl. Let me bring up my screen here for you guys. All right, Carl, can you guys see my screen with Safe Route Talk Colonies High School slide?
Yes.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm the Transportation Circulation Commission. Thank you guys for your service to the community, and thank you for taking time for my presentation here. What I want to do is introduce the committee to the bicycle pedestrian path project that we've been working on along Pleasant Hill Road. So a little background for you guys. I've lived in Lafayette for 7 years now. I've got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old boy that are currently remote schooling at Lafayette Elementary. Big fan of bicycling to BART. When I used to commute into San Francisco, mountain bike, snow ski, and enjoy the outdoors. I lead the innovation program at Swinnerton, bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Cal Poly. I originally started this project about 3 years ago after I rode my mountain bike to the Briones Park there across from Occoloni's High School. Our project team consists of 7 people now. So there's 6 people: Laura McCabe-Hertich, who heads up our communications and marketing; Richard Marshall's our city liaison; Robert Lyman oversees engineering; Angela Ristow, Peter Drevno, and Amanda Walter are overseeing our fundraising. So we've now got a team of 7 people that are focused on this project and bringing it to fruition 3 years in. The goal of the project is to solve this problem over here. So Highway 24, where Pleasant Hill Road runs underneath the highway. I was riding my bike through it, and I'm like, cool, this is where my boys are going to ride to get to high school. It worked great until I got to Mount Diablo. And then as soon as I started heading across the on and off ramps, I realized I was going to have to drive my boys to school. We've got great trails out here in Lafayette, and I quickly realized that we needed to do something about it. So after a few more rides to this area, I came up with the idea of let's go down the middle of this particular area. And so the nice thing is right now there's a concrete and brick median currently down the center of Pleasant Hill Road. And so working with some of the folks at the city, we've looked at the real estate availability, and we can put a path down the middle. This would be a bicycle pedestrian path down the middle. This is a project that was done back in, I believe it's New York is where I got this image from. So these have been done in other areas.
Yeah, Eric, when you describe an image, would you say top left or whatever? So people.
Yep, absolutely, in the top left there for you.
Thank you.
So if you start on the far left-hand side here, this is the Mount Diablo Pleasant Hill intersection, currently where cars go onto Highway 24. And so the concept right now is we would set up a scramble type intersection, And so that's essentially where all the lights turn red during, say, school hours or high volume traffic usage. So students and staff could enter the bike lane, and then they would be protected as you head north along Pleasant Hill. So this would bypass the on and off ramps. They would have the concrete guardrails on both sides. And then they would travel all the way up to the top right-hand corner, which is the Pleasant Hill Road, Deer Hill, Stanley Boulevard intersection. So at this intersection, we would do another scramble. And this is where they could exit the bike lanes. The nice thing about doing a scramble here is we've already got kind of an unofficial drop-off area where a lot of students are getting dropped off on the west side of Pleasant Hill Road. So this would greatly improve the safety of this intersection for the current drop-off students and then for the ones exiting the bike ped path down the middle. And so this would connect the students from South Lafayette to Acalanes High School, but it also provided connectivity for those in North Lafayette. You know, this trail could continue on up Pleasant Hill Road, connecting up to Spring Hill and connecting up to North Lafayette, and allow those residents to use the trail to come down and connect to our existing trail system. So on the weekends, you would get bicyclists, you would get hikers and walkers that don't want to run the gauntlet on the side and go over a minimum of 4 crosswalks with on and off ramps. Unfortunately, I was made aware that there was a fatality at this, at the Highway 24 interchange here in Pleasant Hill Road in the past. We seem to have a fair number of fatalities here in Lafayette with cars versus pedestrians and bicycles these days, which is very unfortunate. We should have none for a city of our size. And so this is a great opportunity to work together. So we've got a group of citizens that are working together to promote and raise money for this project. And then here I'll show you, there's some concepts and some cross sections. So thank you very much to Megan Mittman at Ferrer & Piers. Her firm has helped us with the cross sections here. Robert Lyman and his firm has helped with the layout drawings here. And so we've got a lot of great resources in this community to help make this project move forward. And so we've done cross sections here, moving up on the project, the various areas for it. Oh, no. And here's some zoom ins of those intersections that we've done. And again, these are conceptual ideas for this particular project, right? We still have to do detailed engineering and do exact dimensions, but doing the preliminary work so far, it looks like the layout should work based on the recent surveys that were done by the city there. And so on the left-hand side here, we've got the south termination. This is the Pleasant Hill Road, Mount Diablo interchange here. So we can see in red, we've highlighted the paths, how we're bringing in folks, especially from the folks over here in the bottom left-hand corner. If you're coming out of the east side of Pleasant Hill Road there, this now connects those folks. You know, there's a lot of students that can suddenly get easily connected to Acalanes High School. A lot of people can move back and forth. Same thing with the businesses over here. People now have access to it. And then you're also connecting to an existing bike path here on Mount Diablo Road. So it really extends the current path that we got and connects it to the high school. And on the right-hand side is a zoom in detail. You'll notice with this project, we're keeping all the traffic lanes. We're not eliminating any traffic with this project. So this is a huge win-win for everybody. We're adding bicycle pedestrian capability without reducing car lanes. So, and then, you know, eventually we can continue on up Pleasant Hill Road. We can go past Acalanes, we can go connect up to Spring Hill. We would probably transition over to the western side of that, and I'll show you here. So on this one, you can see the red line here. So here's Deer Hill on the top right, and then here's Spring Hill on the bottom left. So you can see here, here's an opportunity to continue that path and now bring in the folks from North Lafayette as well. So our idea is the first phase would be down the median, connecting Mount Diablo to Acalanes, and then the second phase we continue that path. And not only are we bringing students to Acalanes, but we're connecting North Lafayette residents to the rest of our trails in the city. You know, we've got a really good core trail, that La Miranda Trail, which is great, but we need to do some final extensions, connect to Acalanes, connect to the other schools within the city. So this is a great opportunity to do that. So here's some of the folks in the meetings and stuff that we've been working with and talking about it. So Caltrans, Bike East Bay, Senator Steve Glazier's office, met with Assembly Member Rebecca Bauer-Kahn today. You know, Carl, you've helped me, kind of educated me about the city process and how great it is to work with the city of Lafayette. We're an official nonprofit now. We're under Sustainable Lafayette. So we're part of that great organization here in Lafayette. A big shout out to Mike and Matt with the city. who have given us those layouts and drawings and stuff and said, here's what we've got to work with. And then we met with CCTA, and they're helping us as well go out for grants, and they've assigned a member of their team to our project. So here's some other examples, and I can share this. I believe it's part of the agenda. Just some other examples. There's 3rd Avenue over on Highway 101 in San Mateo. Caltrans built a bike ped path down the center of that overpass about 2 or 3 years ago, I believe. And the big takeaway they had from that was they only made it 8 feet wide. And they said, if you want bike and pedestrians, you need to make it 12 feet wide to allow them both to coexist on the same trail. But they said, other than that, it's been a great project over there for them to really encourage multimodal transportation. And then we've got some more examples of Class 2 over in Moraga Bike Lane and Moraga Road Diet that they recently did. Orinda's doing bike ped facilities as well. And it's a great opportunity to go out and see where they got money from for these particular projects and use that as funding opportunities. So here's some of the ideas that we've identified, City and Lafayette Pathways funds, developer fees. One of our concepts that we still need to validate is the solar power generation. You saw that earlier on in some of my slides. Grants, private donations, and then crowdsourcing, right? How do we tap into the community to help support this project? It's a great project, and we're going to be doing presentations to Acalanes and some other parents groups in the coming weeks as well. So one of the biggest things we're working on now is community outreach and then working our way through the city. So this is the way we understand it. The first formal process of getting this project approved is bringing it to the commission, bringing it out for you guys. And then we're going to be raising funds for the design process as well in the solar analysis. So our ask is, help us move through the process and make this an official project so we can get it built. My goal is to get it built before my oldest goes to high school. So I've got about 4 years to get this done. So I'll open up the questions.
All right, Carl, I've got one.
Yeah, and I can go back to the drawings, okay. Richard.
All right. Eric, thank you. A great project, great effort by the team. I mean, this is really looks like in general the way to go. But a couple of specific concerns. I guess mixing the pedestrians and the bicycles in the middle sounds like, to me, seems somewhat hazardous. Is there a reason not to dedicate bicycle lanes in the center and then perhaps focus the pedestrians on the outside? I mean, granted, you've got to run the gauntlet there with the freeway on and off ramps, but I just, people are going to be hightailing at school on the bicycles, and I think we got a really good opportunity here to separate the bicycles from everyone else and to have them mixed together, both in the middle and, if I understand it, on the outside. It just seems to be creating some risks here that maybe we don't have to have.
Yeah, so the sidewalks will still be here. So the current sidewalks you got today will remain there. You can see those here in red. So we'll definitely have that option. It'll be interesting to see the volume. In theory, if we get a large volume of people biking to the school and walking, there's kind of that happy medium. Small numbers, pedestrians and bikes do fine. Medium numbers, when the bikes can get up to speed, you're right, you can have a potential for collisions and stuff on there. The one good news is you're going to have really during commute hours, essentially in the morning going to the high school, you'll have full 12 feet wide of this lane. So we could look at getting creative and saying, hey, right side is for pedestrians, left side is bicyclists in the morning, like they do with what they used to do with the tunnel, do some traffic movement. And then vice versa in the afternoon with the outflow coming out of the high school. So I think there's definitely some options to take a look at that and see, do we leave the pedestrians all over here on the sidewalk? The nice thing is there's definitely going to be options for the pedestrians because they're still going to have their sidewalks. And then if they choose to come out here with the bikes, absolutely, they're more than welcome to. I just want to keep that option open.
And then just one follow-on question. Is it intended the bicycles could still use the outside paths? Or will they be, go ahead.
Yeah, so we may have to move these from, I believe it's class 3 separated into a class 2. They may have to come into the lanes. And Mike's got some more detailed drawings on that. These were our concepts to keep them, the high-speed ones on the outside, more for the weekend cyclists that like the speed. This may not fit. We may have to bring these inside to this lane and do it a shared lane. But the nice thing is on weekends, you don't have the car traffic that you do during the week. So that's definitely one option there.
Okay, thank you.
I've got some questions, if I may.
Yeah. Hold on one second.
Sure.
Jeff, Lynn has asked whether or not you can try to move her into the meeting again.
All right, let me see if I can find her there. And it looks like we are going to have a public speaker. So whenever you're ready for that speaker to come in, just let me know.
Okay.
All righty. I'm going to have to temper. Well, let's see. So Lynn should be in. Well, I don't see her. Yeah, Eric, I'm going to have to minimize your screen for a sec here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
No. She was there raising her hand. I moved her in and she is now gone again.
Oh. All right, hold on a second. So Lynn, there are technical problems. Why don't you tell me your question? I'll relay it to Eric.
Okay, sorry, Eric, you can put your screen back up. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay. So Eric, the question from Lynn had to do with the width of the bike lanes. She was concerned and heard that there were instances of bike lanes being too small that contributed to accidents. Have you thoughts on the width of the bike lanes?
Yeah, so the bike lanes, the recommendation we have is for a total of a 12-foot wide path. So that would be 6 feet wide for each lane down the middle. And Caltrans recommended that. They said they did 8 feet, 4 and 4 over on 3rd Avenue in San Mateo. And they said that was too narrow for the bicyclists to pass the pedestrians. And so they recommended the 12 feet. I haven't seen any research on, 12 feet. I can definitely reach out to Megan Mittman and our resources at Fair and Peers. They're definitely a great resource for that and dig into it.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. So should we continue with questions from the commissioners or do we want to go to public comment? Thoughts, Jeff?
Well, it's your call. We do have one public comment now. I think that if the commissioners are finished with their questioning and Eric is finished with his presentation.
Well, let's keep going with commissioner questions.
You should get through all that and then do the public comment after the public hears everything that's said.
Thanks for the assistance. All right, Greg, I saw you shaking your head like you wanted to ask questions.
I do. I do. Thank you. Eric, thanks for the presentation. I find this project very intriguing. I'm in this neighborhood and, travel this route often by bike and am very familiar with, with the area. I'm also familiar with a similar project in Portland that's in the interstate in the median crossing over the Columbia. You did address that there is a parallel project, I guess, in San Mateo, and that Caltrans had some learnings from that, which I think is very helpful, given that my understanding is that Caltrans would have to be involved here with the proximity to SR24. One question I had for you was: are there any other sort of local projects that could be somewhat parallel to this that we could look at or view or get lessons from?
Yeah, so the closest one I'm aware of is that one in San Mateo, where it's a center bike ped path. As you mentioned, they've got them in Portland. There's one going up in Seattle that's, I believe, under construction as well. There's several back on the East Coast, which are a little far away, but the one in San Mateo is the closest that I'm aware of for a center bike ped path. Most of the ones that we see today are usually on the side or on the shoulders. San Francisco is doing a lot of segregated. Either they're taking out parking on the sides and putting them on the shoulders between the sidewalk and the cars, or they're putting them between parking and moving traffic. The big challenge with that, we've seen, when I lived in Oakland, we had a fatality between a cyclist, a bus, and a parked car, where somebody opened their door as the bus was going by and the cyclist got crushed by the bus. So those are not the best solution because they don't truly protect the pedestrians and bicyclists. Whereas this one down the center, we can actually do the concrete protection. We can actually put K-rails that keeps the vehicles out of the bicyclists and pedestrians and truly ensures their safety. Unfortunately, here in Lafayette, we've had people get run over on crosswalks. We've had cars go into dry cleaners. Unfortunately, the drivers out here it's not top of mind for pedestrians and bicyclists. So I think in order to ensure a true safe route to Acalanes, the best solution is down the center with the protection. The good news is today it is a median, right? Today it's concrete and brick median. There's no vegetation. There's really nothing to it. So it's a great piece of real estate to use for this project.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Vianney touched upon Dick, I think, touched upon my other question with respect to the northbound bike lanes. I do think that it would be nice to keep them if possible, but I think, any primary focus would be on, trying to maximize the width of the center lane, to ensure safety for both pets and bikers. Then I guess the only other question I had is I know that this section has been talked about for repaving, redevelopment, a variety of things by Caltrans, and the city, for a while, and whether any of the plans that I think are supposed to take place sooner rather than later, would adversely affect this project.
Yeah, so I've been talking with Mike about the repaving project, the restriping and surfacing of it, and it should not have any adverse effects on it. It'd be nice to do them together to take advantage of it, but unfortunately the timing's not there. I know Mike secured some federal funds for that repaving and repaving and striping project. So, I think it's a great opportunity. I know they're doing some green paint and some things like that, but it won't have any negative impacts on this project.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask my question?
Sure.
Great presentation. I think the project is superb. And I've seen this very similar situation in Paris, where I'm from. And I don't know how well they work, but they're kind of iffy at times. But my concern is cars going to make a left turn in front of a bike as we go straight, and also drivers making a right as opposed to a left, what we call left hooks or right hooks. And how are the cyclists going to be protected when they can go through?
You won't be able to go through. So let me go back to this one. So we're going to have concrete. So see in this top left image here, this is one with concrete and steel on top. There's no way for cars to turn across it.
So cars won't be able to make a left turn?
Not across the bike and ped path. They will have to go up to, because today they can't either, right? So today they can't make a left or right turn. There's a median there. So they will have to go up to the existing. So up here at Deer Hill Road, Stanley, where you have an intersection is where they have to make left and right turns. And then down at Mount Diablo Boulevard.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Cars can't make those transitions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a raised, I think it's a standard curb, 6 or 8 inches tall with brick on it. So.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question to that. The connection got a little warbly, so I may have missed something that was said, but I'm concerned about people who are northbound Pleasant Hill turning left onto Deer Hill or making the U-turn, who have a green arrow where they might inadvertently collide with a bicyclist who proceeds straight or diagonally across to the Acalanes corner.
Yeah, so in that intersection, here we go to. to this one. Yeah, so on the right-hand side image here. So our idea for that intersection is to hold bikes and pedestrians here in the center until they have an all clear or an all green. So similar, for those of you that are familiar with in Walnut Creek, they've got a scramble in front of the Apple store, or here in Lafayette in front of Lafayette Elementary, right, where all lights turn red, you can't turn nothing. That's what we're proposing for this intersection. So we would stop all traffic, and then we would allow all pedestrians and bicyclists to transition across the entire intersection during the school hours, most definitely. So we look at a schedule to optimize that, you know, based on the volume of pedestrians and bicyclists coming here. We'd use a scramble approach during the high volume hours. So typically you're 8 to 8:30, you know, in the morning, and then you're 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon type of thing. But those are things we'd have to take a look at, you know, in terms of scheduling to optimize the flow. Because I agree, we don't want anybody trying to yield out of this to cars or traffic. We would hold them here in a queue until they get a green light to proceed across, and then all the car traffic would be stopped. We do the same thing here on the left-hand side at the Mount Diablo Pleasant Hill Road, because this is another, cars are revving up coming off of Mount Diablo to get on Highway 24 because it is an on-ramp to the freeway. And so again, we would hold everybody at the corners, we would red light all the cars, and then we'd allow everybody to transition over. You know, if I had my way, being a pedestrian and bicyclist, I would vote for railroad arms to come down in front of those cars. But I know I may not get that, but I'm going to go for red arrows and red lights and try and use that to stop drivers. And so far, those scrambles have been very successful in San Francisco. They've been done here in Lafayette. They've been done in Walnut Creek. So I think it's a great tool to use, especially on a schedule for those high volume hours where we are going to have lots of students moving in and out of the bike lane, bike pedaling.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think my concern is the population that we're envisioning using this being primarily high school students, and that they might not actually yield when they get to Stanley Boulevard, heading north toward the high school. And that just seems like it could be a very conflict-ridden zone. I have another question. You mentioned that this would allow people from the northern part of Lafayette to go southbound on Pleasant Hill Road. And I'm wondering how that transition works. There's an existing bike lane on the western side of Pleasant Hill Road, but how would someone access the bike ped path once they get to the corner?
Yeah, so very similar to students heading home at the end of the day. If you're coming up Pleasant Hill Road on the top right-hand side here, you know, push the button on the signal, and then when your signal opens up, you would get access. Depending on the hours, you may have to cross twice to get into it, depending on which side you're coming from. So it would slow you down if you're a bicyclist. That's why for the high-speed folks that want to run the gauntlet, essentially with the 4 on and off ramps, they're more than welcome to. We plan on leaving that either in the lane or separate. But for those that want the protected path, they can wait a cycle and join into the path. And then they have the protected path all the way up to Mount Diablo. So your families, you know, I've seen families try and transition this with kids and carts. I can tell you, if I'm pulling my younger son, I used to pull on a trailer behind my bike. I would not take him through this interchange. If I had a protected path, I would use the signals to get out to the middle and use that protected path on the weekends. We've talked with quite a few of the weekend cyclists, the weekends road cyclists, and a lot of them said they would take the protected path because they have tried running through 24 and they've gotten scared with cars. The most dangerous thing with that intersection is because it's curves, right? It's, you know, these on and off ramps are curved. So people aren't looking for bicyclists and pedestrians. You know, you got crosswalks here at the bottom, a bike lane here. They're racing, trying to merge on. This is a really dangerous on and off ramp for pedestrians and bicyclists. And so I think we have enough volume in the city that would keep this busy on the weekends, not just for the school hours as well. I know I would use it to get to Brownies.
Any other commissioner questions again?
Yes, I have one more, if I may. Okay, so the roads are on one, the cars are on one side and the other side. Is there some kind of a rail to make sure that the cars don't go into the bicycle lanes?
Yep. Yeah. So we've got a couple different concepts. So the photo on the top left here is a concrete with a decorative steel on top. This one down here at the bottom, this is actually down in Korea. It's actually about, I think it's 26 miles long. It's in the middle of a freeway. And they used all steel on both sides.
How high is it, if I may ask?
The one in Korea, I believe, is 4 feet tall.
Oh, okay.
The one in New York, where I got this photo from, I believe is 3 feet. It's 2 feet of concrete and then a foot of steel mesh.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the cyclists don't run into them.
Yeah, no, we will that's the whole point of the safe route, is to keep the cars out of the bike lane and keep the cyclists and pedestrians.
No, that's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Greg, did you have your hand? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Me?
Go ahead, Stella. Yeah, Stella.
When you mentioned, Eric, the slide about let's keep going to Spring Hill and beyond, it wasn't clear to me. Is that a center track idea, or the line is drawn kind of on the western side of Pleasant Hill Road?
Yes, that is on the west side. That is correct. So we lose the median. So once you get past Deer Hill Stanley, your median gets real narrow. There's a little bit of vegetation and then actually disappears up here past Acalanes. So this one moves the path to the western side here along the East Bay Regional Park, City of Lafayette land. And actually doing our research, we found out that with the original Deer Hills, the 44 homes proposal, they'd actually included this path, and they'd done some preliminary work with the city and researching this ability to put a path in. East Bay Regional Park is completely on board with this. I've actually spoken with them about it, and they're very supportive of it because it would connect their park entrance with a path. So this one at the Deer Hill Stanley, you would transition from the center to a western side one and come up on the Spring Hill side.
Okay, and it would be the same 2-lane or 2 directions, bi-directional?
Correct, it'd be a 12-foot wide path, yep.
Okay.
This one will probably take a little bit of engineering. There's some hillside work in here and a little landslide issues, but would be completely separate, and our goal would be 12 feet. So very similar to what we have on the La Miranda Trail today.
Chair DeGiorgio, could you entertain just one more question?
Yeah, sure. No.
Sure. Thanks, Ms. Law. In the presentation, you say that the terraces developer have agreed to accommodate the project and whatever work is done. We don't know whether the project will be approved or what conditions will be attached or whether there'll be a trap lane or not. But just in that area south of Stanley, Deer Hill, down to 24, it's sort of narrowest there. And if there were a trap lane included, does that affect the project in any manner?
Yeah, so we spoke with the project team that's involved with the terraces development about their plans, and they shared with us extending this trap lane out farther south, that left-hand turn lane onto Deer Hill Road. And so one of the things we want to do is make sure that we preserve the right-of-way for this path. So whether the terraces project moves forward or not, we want to make sure that any work they do supports the path down the center. That's how we got that language incorporated into it, where they're to work with us and preserve that right-of-way. Because the city does have enough land for this project in terms of right-of-way over here. And so what we want to do is make sure that as the terraces does their work, our path down the center is protected. So it doesn't close out this opportunity, should that project go forward. Yeah.
I'd like to, Stella, did you want to go?
Just one more question.
Yeah.
So in this particular diagram on the street section 3, it looks like the track continues south of Mount Diablo. Is that the proposal? Because I don't see that on the south termination aerial image.
That's one of the ones that's still kind of up in the air as to if we can go forward with that or not. We have 2 ideas there. One is continue it south. The other one is to transition to the islands. Transitioning to these islands, the challenge we've got is these islands are small down here. So that's why we have to do the scramble and really have the students or residents store up back here on the south side of the intersection, because they call them pork chops. These little pork chops right here are pretty small in terms of volume. And so that's something still to be determined in terms of how we do it. Do we come further down to Old Tunnel Road with the path and then do the transition? Or do we do it at Mount Diablo Boulevard? That's something the engineers can help us out with and figure it out.
Okay, but so if you were to do that, then you would have to disrupt the existing median and the existing trees that are in that place.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else? Otherwise, I've got a question. Actually, I'm relaying. Lynn had a follow-up that this morning she sent an email, was relayed by Teresa Kane. It's a matter of public comment, so I'll be happy to forward it to you, Eric, later. But basically, she was concerned that about the possibility of head-on crashes between bicyclists. And so I don't know if you have any information about accident rates of bicyclists versus in traffic. It's not something that's going to stop the project, but I think she's interested, and I just don't know if you have data around that.
I don't. Right now I'm trying to get some data on bike ped accidents within the city of Lafayette. When I did my initial research, University of Berkeley has a database, but it's mostly focused around highways. So I know Jeff and we've been chatting about it and working on pulling that data. I'm not aware of any head-on bike collisions that have resulted in fatalities here in Lafayette. The other thing too is we have the trail, right? The trail that runs from pretty much Stanley all the way out to Moraga. And I'm not aware of any collisions out there. And that trail is packed. Since COVID, I mean, that thing is well used. And I've not heard any news reports of bicycle to bicycle or bicycle to pedestrian crashes. So far, it seems way safer. As far as cars and pedestrians, we just lost Leo this year. Last year, we had that 18-wheeler that took out the guy on Pleasant Hill Road, the cyclist. Before that, we had the pedestrian on Moraga and Mount Diablo there in front of the dry cleaners that got hit by the truck making a left turn lane. When I moved to Lafayette, there was a kid that got hit on St. Mary's in a crosswalk. So the car to pedestrian accidents is way higher than bike to bike or bike to ped.
Yeah. So, okay, thank you. I'll forward you that email so you can hear her concerns. All right, if there's no more questions, let's go to public comments. All right, Jeff?
Okay, I think I'm going to, Eric, I'm gonna remove your slideshow.
Okay.
All right, so we have two hands up right now. Megan Mittman, followed by Jennifer Lieberman. If anyone else would like to participate in public comment, please use the raise your hand function now so we know how many folks we have. And if you're joining by telephone, *9. Okay, so joining the meeting now will be Megan Mittman.
Hi, everybody. I'm back. Trying to keep my comments on the specific agenda items. I just wanted to really endorse and applaud Eric's presentation from tonight. I think his group's effort is impressive, is creative, and crossing through interchanges is often the most challenging part in a city for pedestrian and bicycle mobility connectivity. I wrote the national recommended best practice several years ago on how to get peds and bikes through interchanges, and all the core elements of that guide are really consistent with what this document produces. I think it not only addresses the critical last mile connection, but is really from the trail out to the school, but is really in line with the city's policies and actually a lot of Caltrans new policies around safe system. And they also just released on July 1st some intention to comment on development that's related to the state highway system, which of course the terraces would be, to look at safety, impact, and mitigation. And so this could be a real chance to look at opportunities for some of the new Caltrans guidance there. I think this is just a chance to be very visible and focused on the city's priorities for getting pedestrians and bicyclists across this most critical piece. And just to tie it back to my comments earlier on Burton Valley, I see this as a last mile connection for the trail. I see a lot of the things that could happen in Burton Valley as the first mile connection to the trail. And while this is a medium to longer term, there's a lot of complexities with this one. Some of the ideas we have for Burton Valley are pretty quick and short. And so I would urge you to really focus on Eric's and endorse Eric's, and also think about some things we could maybe do in the next 3 to 6 months at the same time as we focus on the longer term things. So, thanks for the chance to comment.
Are there any commissioner questions for Megan? Thank you very much for your comments.
Okay, so let me see. We have next Jennifer Lieberman coming up, followed by, I believe it's probably Abby Fateman, although it says Richard. So if anyone else would like to comment, please use the raise your hand function or *9. Joining the meeting now is Jennifer Lieberman.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. I have an unstable internet connection and some Disney Plus going on in the house, so hopefully you can continue to hear me. To the commission, thank you so much for your service. And Eric, I'm so glad you're taking a leadership role in moving Safe Routes to Acalanes forward. We are just so lucky as a community to have you. I want to introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Lieberman. I am an Acalanes graduate. And when I moved my family back to Lafayette, we wanted to pick a home very specifically on the trail so that our 2 kids, who are now 6 and 11, could ride their bikes to Burton Valley, Stanley, and hopefully Acalanes. So tonight, I'd like to just share my views on, why we need this safe route to Acalanes, and also why I think this is just the beginning of what we can do and what we can and what we should do for safe streets. My son has ridden his bike to school since he was 8. It gives him independence, it gives him exercise, and it reduces all the congestion near the schools. But he is now fearful because his classmate Leo, as you know, was killed on July 28th, riding his bike in front of Burton Valley Elementary. My son recently told me that it didn't feel real to him that somebody his age could die. And because my son is 11, his words are few but powerful. I think safety on our streets should be a top priority during the pandemic because so many people are using streets to exercise and to connect safely at a distance. And since Leo's death, talking to dozens of neighbors, I've learned that we're all taking to the streets for very different reasons, but we all share some very common values. We believe that loving Lafayette must be inclusive and respectful of everyone who uses our streets, including seniors and children who are walking, rolling, and biking. We believe that one pedestrian, one cyclist, or one driver who dies on our streets is one too many. And we also optimistically believe that Lafayette can and should be a model community for safe streets for everybody. And I believe that together as a community, Lafayette has the resources. You've heard from experts. You're seeing people take leadership roles. We have fundraisers, we have activists to help us achieve these goals. I think the Safe Routes to Acalanes project that you just heard about embodies all of these values. And as important as it is, and as hopeful as I am about it, I also know that it will take 3 to 5 years to come to fruition. So while I support it wholeheartedly, I also want to ask the commission to concurrently focus on some highly visible near-term projects. We have an opportunity, thankfully, to do this strategically. I think you guys have now heard about the UC Berkeley Safe Trek report. And what I'd like to ask of you is to direct the city staff to communicate the findings of the report, but more importantly, for you to articulate a process by which the community can be engaged to weigh in on these recommendations and to see that action is taken. I believe, finally, I want to leave you with my thought that I think your support of Safe Routes to Acalanes and your decisions as commissioners about budgets and priorities are really moral statements about the city's values. Last week, my son got back on his bike for the first time since Leo died. He said it was a little bit scary, but it was also the right thing to do. Thank you for your service and your consideration.
Thank you, Jennifer. Commissioner, questions or comments?
Yes, I have one. We forgot two groups in all this. Are the older people and people who are handicapped of any sorts, and those cannot be left out since we have quite a few people who are quite old in Lafayette itself. So we should make it a little easier for them as well.
This absolutely would. We have a lot of seniors on the trail.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your comments, Jennifer. I appreciate it. And I just want to comment and say that I personally, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I had hoped that this would be a year where we would put a big focus on safe routes to schools. It was in our presentation to the City Council, and it's been disappointing that COVID hit and kind of disrupted the economy, and at the same time we lost our transportation planner. But I hear your concerns, and I will be following up on keeping the results of the UC Berkeley study we'll try and follow up on that. Or we will.
Great. I look forward to working with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Jeff, is there another hand up?
Yes, there is. And also, I believe we have Lynn on board. I hear Lynn there. Lynn, can you hear us? And if so, say something.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, finally. Thank goodness. Just be mindful. I do not want to mute you because we don't want to lose you, but your throat clearing is being heard loud and clear. So just a little FYI.
May I say something about the bike lanes?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, we're right in the middle of public comment. Why don't we just finish public comment and then we can circle
bring
back.
it back. Yeah, we'll bring it back, Lynn.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I want to
stand by.
bring my experience as the founder of the Lafayette Moraga Trail and the research I did with that.
Yeah, hold that thought, Lynn. We're going to finish up with public comment first.
Okay.
Okay, coming up next, I believe, is Abby Fateman. And if anyone else would like to provide public comment, please use the raise your hand function now. Okay, joining the meeting is Abby Fateman. Yeah, Abby, you're in the meeting, so go ahead and unmute yourself and you can turn on your video.
All right. Can you hear me? Hi, this is Abby Fateman, not Richard Fateman. I'm sorry I didn't change that. Might be confusing on the other end when my father gets back on though. So I guess it is a tough act to follow Jen and Megan, but I'm glad to be in their company making these comments. I want to thank Eric and that team's work. I think it's extraordinary. When I was on Parks, Trails, Recreation many years ago, we talked about extending the trail from, under Highway 24 up to Spring Hill past Acalanes. And we were told that that was something that circulation or bike ped or somebody else would take care of. And that, we should back off of that topic. That wasn't for us. And so I'm glad that it has been taken up with another commission, and I hope that it isn't pushed off on somebody else to be somebody else's responsibility, because these things can become orphans among the city commissions, whether it's a public safety thing or a traffic thing or a parks thing. So I do appreciate that. I'm speaking from a little bit of a different perspective from Jen and Megan, which is that my kids are older. I have a kid in college and a kid who's a high school senior. They rode their bikes to Burton Valley, probably starting in third grade every day. And rode their bikes every day to Stanley. And when our son started Acalanes, he started riding his bike. And after about a month, it was like, no way, this is crazy. Like, it is scary every time your child leaves your house on a bike without you there. Even when you're there following behind them, 15, 20 feet, it's terrifying. But riding to Acalanes was not in the cards. We had been spared the parent-kid drop-off at school for a decade, and it was a shock to the system. to have to enter that horrible morass of parents and cars. And the thought of my kid navigating a bike through it was horrifying. So I am really appreciative of this effort. It is absolutely a gap in our system that needs to be filled. It's a crying shame that we can't connect the schools right across the highway. Like how hard can it really be? But it is hard, and I get that. But I would encourage you to look at this as part of something that needs to be pursued, really to create connectivity in our community for our kids to be able to move safely around so people aren't in cars. My kids didn't get in a car for a week at a time because they would ride their bike to school and back and to all their activities. Starting in high school, that was not the situation anymore. And that's a shame. That is not what this community is about, and it's not what we should be doing. So I really applaud Eric and the work that's happening. I'm so happy to see it happening, and I really hope the commission and the city can get behind this to make it happen. It's that last bit that really makes the difference. As I was told when I was little, if you don't do the last 1% of the job or your chore, it's almost like you didn't do it at all. So you can sweep the whole kitchen floor, but leave a pile, at one end. It's as if it doesn't count. So it's not quite the same with the bike lane, but seeing a complete project is so much better and so much more fulfilling for our community and our kids and what we want to see. And so I encourage you to support this project. And I want to thank Eric and his team for all the work they're putting in. And I hope you guys don't give up and don't get discouraged and stay at it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions? All right. Jeff, thank you very much. Abby, Jeff, are there any more speakers?
I would like to say something.
No, hold on,
Lynn. Just 1 second. Let me do one thing here, and I will check momentarily. Okay. There are no speakers at this moment, Mr. Chair.
All right, let's go back for final questions from the commissioners, and starting with Lynn.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to say that our bike lanes on the Lafayette-Moraga Trail started with the death of a bicyclist. She was only 7, Tracy Gelderman. Her daddy built Round Hill Country Club. She was killed in front of her house. Our daughter was supposed to have been with her, but she was too tired that night, so he took Tracy home. When I opened the door, the telephone was ringing, and they said, "Don't bring Suzanne tomorrow. Tracy is dead." That was very difficult, I have to say, and it changed the pattern of my life, certainly, and also Vaughn Wilson's, who was my partner. I need to have you all be researched very carefully bike-to-bike accidents. Minneapolis and Davis both had broken backs, fatalities, head-on collisions with their two-way trails. I don't know what you're planning to separate the bikes, but they must be separated. It is very important. I checked with the city of Sausalito that gets 5,000 bikes a day. They used to have a joint median bike. Most of them don't even remember it. It was removed because of all the accidents down the center of the road. They were bike-to-bike accidents. They weren't car accidents. I don't think you have any statistics on the bike-to-bike accidents, and you have to do better research on that before you try installing something like this. It would be a wonderful thing to have if it worked, but you don't want dead kids. It is not a pretty picture, and it breaks everyone's hearts. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Eric, do you have any comments on Lynn's comments?
I agree. We got to do some research on it. Hopefully the city's got some stats on it from police and fire that they can help us out with that. Just having lived in Lafayette for 7 years, and Lynn, I don't know if anybody's heard of any bike-to-bike or bike-to-pedestrian fatalities here in the city. But, obviously we have had a lot of kids killed by cars. I think that is well understood here, and we've got to do something about it. This is ridiculous, because the more I dig into this, the more I learn about kids dying from cars. Yeah. I'm not aware of any kids dying from a bicycle yet here in our city, or many other cities for that matter. Usually fatalities get promoted, but we can definitely dig into those numbers with police and fire and see what they got.
Right. Any other questions for Eric?
Well, I do. I could make a comment here. You can look at the Golden Gate Bridge on the weekends. There, all the cyclists going north and south are all on the west side, but during the week they are on the east side with pedestrians commuting and so forth, which I used to do. But I've never seen two bicycle accidents on the Golden Gate Bridge. So, and I used to ride it quite often then, particularly on weekends. And it's not very wide either, so.
May I say something?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that was my motion, that pathway on the bridge, when I was serving on the CCTA. Those are adult bicyclists. Those are not kids.
That's right.
They're not grade schoolers. They're not teenagers. It's a different picture entirely.
Except there are rental cyclists as well, which can be trouble, actually.
They can. Yeah, that's right. But we must separate those bicyclists that are going to be going. If we get that project on Pleasant Hill Road, the different directions, the north and the south, must be separated.
Okay, we can definitely look into that and look at some other projects. We've got a lot of other examples now. Richmond San Rafael now has a bike lane on it.
Call the city of Davis. Sausalito has 5,000 bikes a day generally, maybe not during COVID or maybe more during COVID, I don't know. They're willing to talk, but call the city of Davis. That's certainly a bicycle city if there ever was one. We don't have many bicyclists compared to the ones that we had in 1972 when we put that in. And as for the trail, we were just trying to get the kids out of the streets, out of the mud, and onto something solid, which was it. We've enjoyed it. But that was the purpose was not to create a nice recreational trail. The purpose was to get the kids to school safely. So if you could research means of separating them and the experiences, but Davis can give you a great deal of information.
Okay. We'll reach out to Davis. They are a wonderful bicycle city.
Yeah. Actually, Sausalito is scary for cyclists. As soon as you get off the bridge and you go down Alexander Drive and go into the town, it's really, there is absolutely no room. There is no bicycle lanes. I mean,
yeah.
All right. Well, I think we should wrap this up. I want to thank Eric very much for doing this. This has been already, I think you mentioned, and it's been 3 years at least. And I appreciate your continued pursuit of this issue. Thank you very much for
Chair DeGiorgio.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, so I want to put some staff perspective into this because I want to wrap it up. I know that Eric and many others, they want next steps, right? Yes. And I want to be, well, I don't want to be, but I'm going to be the downer in the project and say it's not a project yet. I would be fully supportive of this type of project. I want to be clear from staff's engineering point of view, but it's not a project yet because we don't have funding and we don't have city council approval of it as a project. So we are working toward that, and that's part of the presentation. What you had tonight was a wonderful presentation that introduces you to a proposed project, and it's a placeholder at this time. And for the most part, drivers would even approve of this because they're not losing anything. They're basically in the same lanes they're in. They're not going to be slowed down or sped up or anything. And cyclists and pedestrians will be much more protected, particularly because they won't have to cross the on-ramps and off-ramps. But also, well, just also even getting them there, the scramblers. And right now you have the bike lanes along the road. You have it in the northbound direction, but it ends in the southbound direction, and you only have essentially what would be a Sharrow situation where your more experienced bikers need to travel with the vehicles. So I want to just share that I think it's a great project or a proposed project. There is one stakeholder that would lose out, and that is some parking, because we are fighting for inches. for the width of that pathway. It's been brought up, we want 12 feet. There may be actually spots where it has to neck down to 8 or 9 or 10 feet. We would make it as wide as we could. And the comments on bike to bike and the comments that we got from Caltrans, we made it 8 feet. We recommend you make it wider. And I'm sure that as we research this out, we will find more information on what is a comfortable width for multi-lane bike traffic mixed with pedestrians. You know, on Pleasant Hill Road, just south of this, we have two, one on the west side and one on the east side, two 10-foot pathways. Those are both multi-use, multi-direction pathways. But because we were fortunate enough to have one on each side, in general, people ride them southbound on the west and northbound on the east as you would drive your vehicles. So I think that helps and probably keeps you know, the multi-lane bicycles apart. We would not have that luxury with this multi-use pathway. We would have to put them both in both directions in the center. But because of that, we would be fighting for inches and making it as wide as we could. And we would not likely have bike lanes available with the vehicle travel lanes, because we'd need that space in the middle so that we have a more protected and safer, wider space for multi-use pathway. Your more experienced riders would still have the option of riding in a vehicle travel lane, and many would. But even some, I'd say, moderate riders would likely use this as a protected resource because they know they don't want to cross those on-ramps and off-ramps either. However, the next steps for this would be, I think that we have to work out that loss of parking. Caltrans specifically said, city, you need to work out these things. I think this needs to be brought back again to this commission, Transportation and Circulation, as a proposed project with specific requests. One of those requests is we would eliminate parking. We would modify the bike lane. We would work with a potential developer to make sure that the placeholders in place. We would change the functions of the traffic signals so that it would allow for a scrambler protected all pedestrian and all bicycle crossing when all vehicles are being held. So kind of those specifics so that other stakeholders out there could come in and say, yes, this is great, we're in favor of this. I don't think it should go to the council until this commission has kind of worked out those types of questions. And then the next step would be, as a proposed project to the city council, should it be brought forward. And, you know, keep in mind the council has to fund it somehow. And the presentation, you know, suggested, and I think rightfully so, several sources of funding, because I think that's what it's going to take. I think it's going to take some teamwork, some private funding, some grant funding, some public funding, some city, maybe even general fund funding. But for the city council to approve it, keep in mind that they have to be aware of the trade-offs. If we put a pathway here, there are 2 or 3 other locations in Lafayette that may not get one, you know, within that same time frame. And it's a trade-off. And it may also be a trade-off. I don't have funding right now to maintain some pathways that are already in place and they are in need of maintenance. So as it is next year, I'm probably going to try and recommend we actually take from some of the street maintenance projects and put them specifically allocated to bike path and trail maintenance. And because they've served their life and they're in need of some maintenance. So we don't have a fund for that, let alone this new walkway, let alone the maintenance of this in perpetuality. And that's something that we need to consider too. So big questions, a great proposed project, but it's going to take a lot of stakeholders to participate. And it's a trade-off. We can't do everything everywhere. So that's my recommendation to this commission, is that it do come back here before going to the city council with those types of questions kind of being worked out as more of a public hearing for anybody that might park there right now or might have a different way that they want the bikes to cross and they really want the bicycle lanes to be left on the roadway. I think we need to hear that public input as part of this process.
May I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, I just wanted to put, this relates to the bike lanes and travel north of Deer Hill. Some of our residents have their eye on that median to remove it for the sake of a turning lane from headed southbound into Stanley. And certainly that would improve the speed of getting kids to school. But the reason we put that median in, I got a $6 million grant. It was a Livable Cities grant, and I found it by calling Sacramento. We put that in specifically because we were experiencing so many accidents in that section all along the school property. People were turning in and turning out into the school, out from the school. A lot of them were adults, a lot of them were kids. They were going back and forth also from the school district building, and people were getting hit and they were getting hurt. That's why we got the $6 million. What I'm saying is that we put that median in for a very good reason, to prevent people from getting hurt. And I would be very reluctant to take that away and give that to bicyclists. It might stop the accidents, I suppose. We would still have the turning problem. Who knows what else we would have. It requires a lot of thinking before we remove that for another part of that bike lane. Maybe better to put them on the sides at that point.
So in response to Commissioner Hadane's comment, this project does not propose removing those landscaped center medians. I want to be clear about that. I think Commissioner Witherspoon asked about that. The proposed trail north of Deer Hill, at least for now, is on the west side of the road, and it would leave that intact. And I agree, by the way, with the left turns in and out of the school district, and it's at the tennis courts there. There's quite a bit of traffic in and out that people use as drop off, that people use to get to work and to school. I think that was a very nicely added protective barrier they also set it up as like a one-way loop so that you could only go in one driveway and out at another, and it kept some semblance of where you're supposed to be moving in and out of traffic, because then you're crossing multiple travel lanes. So that's very important. So I just want to add that this project does not propose removing that. There are always other suggestions. Yeah, the paper does show that. Yeah, it's on the west side, but it's a little difficult to see.
It's in the papers that were in our presentation tonight.
So, and Eric, maybe you know your presentation very well. I mean, we definitely talk about extending it north of Deer Hill because we want to get to Spring Hill School and even beyond Reilly's Valley, because that connects a pathway, and even up to Rancho View if we could. But nowhere do I believe it specifies that's going to continue in the center median. In fact, it's specifically shown on the west side. So correct. If that's discussed in error, then it would be an error, but I don't believe that's the case.
I concur, Mike.
On the west side.
Yeah. My final comment is, Mike, I did not mean to, when I used the term project, I did not mean to imply that it is a city project. I was treating it in terms of it is a project, but it's not a city project. And so, and part of that is because I've been maybe more involved than other commissioners in following this. But so I thank you for your comments on that. And I agree with you that there are a lot of competing interests that need to be weighed, and we need to always have public input. And I do look forward to the time when we can have this back for a full hearing.
So I guess Carl and Mike,
yeah.
What do we need to get to that full hearing? What do you guys need to bring it back to the CERC commission for you guys? Is it just identifying those comment things and doing outreach, or kind of what's required for that next step?
So I think that's the biggest part of it, Eric, is just anybody that might be for it or against it for any reason, I think we just need to vet out, right? And give opportunity to equal sides and invite specifically public comment, maybe even a broader advertisement. It could be a workshop prior to this, but ultimately after that workshop, we want the public input. And then ultimately we would want the Transportation and Circulation Commission to recommend forwarding this to the City Council for inclusion as a future capital improvement project. So it could also be, for example, this section is shown in our master walkways plan. It's in the plan, but it shows it on, you know, the sides. And technically we might want to revise that to even have a placeholder for the center walkway, because when that plan was updated last, it wasn't envisioning a center walkway. So there's just kind of some housekeeping that could go along with taking this to the City Council that we want cleaned up.
Are you talking about a center walkway in the middle of the road between the bike lanes?
No, Lynn, I'm talking about a multi-purpose, multi-mode center, multi-purpose pathway.
Yeah.
And where would you put it?
Just between Mount Diablo, right now, just between Mount Diablo Boulevard and Deer Hill Road.
Yeah.
Just a little production note here. Lynn, you should probably go through the chair, just because when people are listening to this offline, they don't know it's who you are. All you have is a telephone number up there. So if you do want to be recognized, please ask the chair. Thank you.
I have no way of doing that.
Yes, you do. You say, Mr. Chair, I'd like to speak. And
okay.
He'll announce your name.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff, for that recommendation. Lynn, do you have any further comments?
No, I don't think so. But I think another thing that is needed here is research and accidents, and the experience that people have had.
I think that would be part of the next steps. And then Greg, you had your hand raised.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't want to prolong this too long. And Mike, I certainly respect, what you said in terms of there's a lot of stuff to figure out here. But I just would like to thank Mr. Law. I mean, I think these concepts, in terms of improving safety, improving access, and filling in some gaps in the bike ped network, connecting major points in town are great goals that deserve further exploration.
Thank you.
All right. Then one last.
Carl,
yes, Lynn?
Hi, Carl. Gail. I had just a quick clarifying question I wanted to ask, and that is, at the time that a biker arrives at the intersection of Pleasant Hill and Deer Hill, or Pleasant Hill and Mount Diablo, is the intention for the scrambler to be in effect anytime that happens, or only on the weekends with peak volumes?
That's something we'll have to look at with a transport person. Our initial thought is definitely during school hours when we know we're going to have large volumes. And then we'll have to look at what that volume is on the weekend, right? If, say, for example, we find out Saturday mornings are a real popular time, then we could look at doing the scramble on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings. The goal was trying to optimize it both, right? Optimize it for the people using the trail and not do it all the time, right? Because if there's no bicycles or peds there, there's no need for the scramble. And so that'll take a discussion with a transportation planner that understands how you program those signals.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question.
Bayani.
Yes. Can Caltrans be involved in financing that project?
We talked with Assembly Member Rebecca Bauer-Kahn about that today. So one of the things that came out during that call was actually Orinda procured some federal DOT funds for one of their projects. So we're actually going to talk with some of our federal representatives about procuring that. Caltrans does have some projects and goals of supporting bicycles and pedestrians. And we spoke with them, what was that, about a year and a half ago, I think, with Sergio at Caltrans, and they liked the idea. They're supposed to be supporting this. What funding they have available, I believe, is mostly under SB1, but those are things that we're researching and digging into, is what can we get from state agencies, federal agencies, private folks. It's like Mike said, it's going to be a combination. This is a pretty sizable project on the dollar side.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Eric. I think we need to go to the next item. So have a nice night. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on to staff reports. Item A. Mike, would you like to take us through your staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you recall, this is a pilot study. Who would you like to call? Sorry about that. As you recall, this is a pilot study for a right turn at Mount Diablo Boulevard and Moraga Road. It's adding a second right-hand turn lane for vehicles, and the intent was to increase capacity, particularly during peak school drop-off and pickup, as those were very heavily traveled patterns, and we were having a hard time flushing vehicles off of Moraga Road during these commute times. And this was one of the suggested projects in the downtown congestion study. It did note even then that it is in conflict with pedestrian accessibility and for bicyclists and pedestrians. So, but the intent was to try it because it was a relatively inexpensive try. And we basically found that it does increase throughput, and that would almost be common sense because what you're doing is extending a green time for the right turn. Even without the added second lane, you are going to get more throughput because you don't have any right turners that are having to wait for pedestrians crossing, because we held them and we crossed them 3 legs instead of 1, and did not allow them to cross on the east side of the intersection from, say, Plaza Park to the bank crossing Mount Diablo Boulevard. They had to go around. You'll recall that this project came to you before, just first to ask if we could do it. The city council approved doing it. And then we came back last fall, but we really did not have very good data. And the reason for that is because we didn't have a lot of data prior to starting it. We only got a system installed that could do the vehicle counts a couple months before we actually changed the lane configuration and allowed the dual right turns. So some of the comments made were, could we have some better data? And can we confirm if this is working or not? And I will point out, and I want to, I'll share my screen with just the table. So as you probably saw from my staff report, I gave you a link to all the data because there's literally hundreds of pages of data. And I wanted to share not just the pertinent, I wanted to share samples. I didn't cherry pick any of this data. I went through and I said, this is one study we had of before and after for the right turn throughput. And it was done in May, and it was done with one source of traffic count. It was an electronic version, but it was not our GridSmart version. It wasn't until September that we installed the GridSmart, and we could start getting traffic counts kind of continuously through this intersection of Mount Diablo at Moraga Road. And then we collected more data in October, and then into November, and then we started the pilot study. So really we had September, October, November data, and I've just taken days from here, and then we also had May. And one of the suggestions were, you know, you really need seasonal, year-to-year, month-to-month comparisons, which was a very good comment. And it's something that we learned in this pilot study is that I think with traffic studies, short-term pilot studies are not real effective. You can't obtain much data because of the seasonal variations. In fact, when we first brought this back, we kind of even commented, and I mentioned it in the staff report again, that had we only looked at the first 90 days of data, it would have looked like our throughput actually decreased. Because it did decrease into December, into January, but it probably naturally is going to do that. So, but if you look at year to year for the same month, in fact, the same day, May was really flat, and this could be an anomaly, or it could be that the May 2018 data was taken with one type of traffic control reading system, and the May of 2019 was taken with the GridSmart. The other data points here in September, October, and November were all taken year to year with the same GridSmart system. So you can expect them to be at least more accurate in comparison and just more comparable. You're not only comparing apples to apples, but you're comparing Fuji apples to Fuji apples, so to speak. So you're getting exact. I will point out that again, the first, if you looked at just those May data, it was flat, and that could be the case. But if you look into these fall data points where we had before and after year to year, in the morning, you've got the 17 to 19% increased throughput. In the afternoon, it's actually more. And this is the afternoon commute, like 2 to 3:30. Not like a 5 to 6 commute home. This is when we have the spike is the school times. Given Lafayette Elementary, Stanley Junior High, and Camp Alindo up the hill, who all come down Moraga Road in the afternoon during non-COVID times when schools are in session. So, but that varied from 31 to 48%. And I provided you all that data without making, hundreds of pages of data. But you could pretty much take year to year, and these are very accurate. You could almost randomly go to another Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, and it wouldn't have to be September 4th and then September 3rd. It could be 3 days later or the next week, and you're going to see very similar results. 17 to 20% changes. 30 to almost 50% changes in the afternoon. So there's no doubt that it's effective. But what you are doing, of course, is you're stopping pedestrians and making it less convenient for them. And you're giving more green time to the vehicles. And even though we've had this increase, we have had a few people, and literally a few, comment that they really like the second right-hand turn as a driver, and they would like it to continue indefinitely. But we've had many more, maybe 20, whether it's verbal or written, basically request that we restore the pedestrian access and the crosswalks that were there before. Now, so my recommendation is that we do that. It was my recommendation in the fall. It's still my recommendation. This is our downtown. Our general plan is supposed to encourage pedestrian walking, encourage walking downtown, encourage safer routes. We had a group from the senior housing facility around the corner comment that this was an inconvenience to them. These are older people and possibly handicapped people that now have to cross 2 or 3 legs of a intersection, and a long intersection, rather than just one leg of the intersection. So that's why that's my recommendation. It's in compliance with our general plan. It's basically just a trade-off. And downtown, it seems like we've got the schools, we've got the library, we've got the shopping center, we've got Plaza Park. In the trade-offs, it really probably should be the pedestrians that are winning out and not the vehicle drivers. In these COVID times, traffic patterns may change, and they may change a little bit indefinitely. I think as many are learning that we actually can work from home more, or maybe stagger our hours more. There may be less traffic demand. If schools go back into session, I'm sure we'll have these peak times again. But as the previous conversation and other conversations that we're having, if we are able to adapt and add more safer routes around our schools, perhaps we can reduce our number of vehicles at our schools dropping off and picking up. which is really what's caused the need to even try this pilot study in the first place. It's just a peak number of vehicles during a short duration centered around school drop-off and pickup. But it's at the expense of the pedestrians. So I'm happy to take questions. That's pretty much the end of my report at this time.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Lynn, you're recognized.
Thank you. Yes, Mike, have we ever considered a scramble? I've seen a lot of scrambles in situations exactly like that one. Is that possible here, do you think?
So Lynn, I think that is a possibility here in the future. You know, and changing back and adding this more protected crosswalk doesn't preclude doing that in the future. The crosswalks would be in place. We'd have to consider whether we would want to add the diagonals here, because you do have 2 lanes turning left from westbound going to southbound and 2 lanes turning left from northbound going to eastbound. It is a complicated, wide, big intersection. It's our most heavily traveled intersection in the city, basically. So it's something that could happen. And basically what you're talking about is just holding all vehicles while all pedestrians cross in any direction they need to go.
Yeah, and diagonal does work too.
Yeah,
I've seen it. I've lived it. There's a major intersection in New Zealand in the middle of their downtown that has one, and their corner was very much like ours.
Well, we have it at School Street and Brook Street here in town, and we have it as Eric Law mentioned in the previous. We have it in Walnut Creek in a couple locations, down by the Apple Store. Anyway, it's in at least 2 locations, and near the theater by the Cheesecake Factory, I think, if you're in Walnut Creek. So they do work, and we're not precluded from doing that in the future. But my recommendation is still to restore that PED crosswalk so that people can have a more direct route from Plaza Park to the shopping center.
Carl,
Mike, Richard, Dick.
Yep. Mike, one item that really resonated with me at the October meeting, public comment about safety. And visibility there is awful with those trellises. Somebody coming through, having slogged through St. Mary's, School Street, Brook Street, they're in a hurry to get to work. They're going to make that next light, and you don't see people crossing or intending to cross until the very last second there. And I just think this is, we've talked about car throughput. It's improved the throughput cheaply. That's great. We talk about pedestrian mobility. That's important, but safety is even more important. And I think this is a huge safety issue that could really be asking for trouble. Maybe if you get those trellises out of there, do something different. But I think we're asking for trouble if we go down the path that you're suggesting, everything as is, except people can walk back through there. Your material had data that I know it's not definitive, but it hints at a safety improvement since the change was made. And before we jump ahead here, I think that side of the issue really needs to be pretty thoroughly aired out. If you have any.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on a second, Lynn. Let's let Mike respond to Dick's comment.
So I like the comment. I don't like the line of sight that you have there. 2 things we've tried to do to improve it is remove some of the vine that was there, because it used to be even a little worse with that vine sticking out from where the trellis location is. And then we did add in the center median for a driver a message sign, basically, that said, that's telling the driver to yield to the pedestrian, and so that they can see that from further back. I agree with the comment. I think that the visibility of a pedestrian is difficult until you get up really close. And if you're not looking for it because you are doing exactly what you said, you're trying to just beat the light or get through. And I'd be happy to take a recommendation from this commission on anything they would recommend to improve that visibility at that corner.
May I? May I
No,
make
hold on, Vianney. Lynn's next. Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, I just wanted to say visibility for the pedestrian is very much better the way it is now. Not at that corner because they're not using it, but you can so easily see the other three crossings just all in one whack. It's a very, very open situation. Seems to me much safer, but it is a little longer for the pedestrian. But I was wondering, some cities add bulb outs at the end like that. Would that be more safe for the pedestrian, plus a little, maybe a little pruning? I hate to trim those vines. That trellis was put there for beauty because it was such a horribly ugly park and intersection. But maybe we could move it back a little bit. But I just wondered about a bulb out. Would that work?
So we absolutely, and I know this for a fact, we don't have even inches for a bulb out on the Moraga Road side. As it is, those lanes are not as wide as you would like them to be. They're not even 10 feet wide. And this, whether we like it or not, this is a truck route through town. Yeah. So I really can't do anything on Moraga Road. I have a little bit of the same issue on Mount Diablo for eastbound travelers. And in fact, and most of you, if not all of you, are probably aware of this. In fact, there's already a little bit of a shift or a diagonal through that intersection as you're traveling from eastbound on Mount Diablo Boulevard, coming from Oak Hill toward First Street. You actually have to veer your vehicle and shift a little bit to hold your lane position. And then we have the same thing at First Street if you're traveling eastbound at Mount Diablo Boulevard. And that's just because we don't have the road width there that we'd like to have. So there's a little bit of a shift. So I don't believe a bulb out would work at this location, at least not with the existing number of vehicle lanes that we have.
Okay. Vianney, you had a question or comment?
Well, I have a comment and a question. I'll ask, for safety purposes, can't you put a flashing arrow so that they know that there are pedestrians, that will flash showing that there are pedestrians in the crosswalk? Could even be red. Yeah, I've seen it in red as well. It's lit, you know.
So we did add a message sign.
Yes.
Yeah, we did add a message sign. It's located in the center median, you know, if facing back to the northbound drivers. So if you look to the crosswalk, you'd see it at the center median. I think it's the same idea that you're asking for.
Right.
Honestly, it's been so long since we disconnected it. I can't remember exactly what it does, whether it just turns and there's a solid flash or a solid message, or if it's flashing. We could look into that, but I don't recall exactly what it was, but I believe it does what you're requesting.
Yeah. And then
I have a follow-up question on that.
Yeah, I would like to finish here.
Okay.
The other thing is that it's really for pedestrians. This is a city where we want to walk. And most of the comments that have been made are made by drivers, and they don't think about the pedestrians in the heat or in the rain and so on and so forth to go across 3 lights in order to go to the bank. You know, it cannot be all for the drivers. At least they are sitting in their cool cars while the poor pedestrians is in the heat under the sun or in the rain. And we have to think about all these people. And there are plenty of them. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. So I had also thought about the idea of on the other, one of the other parts of that intersection, there's a no right turn on red flashing light, and you see that at many intersections. Would that be something that would be could be installed so that it gives the pedestrians extra lead times to, you know, to get into the intersection?
So I believe it already has some lead time, but I could check that. It's getting more common to basically, you know, hold the vehicle and allow the pedestrian to start before a vehicle could even go. Although you know, you get the right turns on red, right? And unfortunately at many intersections, and this one I'm sure included, you have to do that fairly quickly because you know that you're about to have eastbound traffic cross in front of you and you have to beat the traffic. And if you're in a hurry to make that right turn on red, you might be concentrating on making your full stop, watching that it's clear for your eastbound traffic and not looking necessarily to the right, to the west and seeing that pedestrian that's there. So that's a conflict at basically every intersection where you have a crossing and you've got right turns. You know, in this country, we're allowed to make a right turn on red. You could enforce a no right turn on red if we felt that it was helpful. And if that would be similar, you know, it would be the reverse of what we've done. It would be giving more time to the pedestrian and less to the vehicle. What we've done for this pilot study is give more time to the vehicle and really less to the pedestrian, at least for this phase at that head crossing.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to let you know you do have 2 public comments.
Yes, thank you. I see that.
Carl, this is Gail. I had something I wanted to.
Okay, Gail.
I definitely do. As we've already noted, this is one of the major intersections of the city, and there's often a high volume of cars that are coming up Moraga to turn right onto Mount Diablo in order to get onto 24. And I do have a lot of concern with respect to the safety of pedestrians crossing there. I definitely hear Vianney and others in terms of being able to make it a more pedestrian-friendly place and area. And obviously, I would like to do that, but not at the detriment of their safety. And by virtue of the flow of traffic there, it's obviously been noted as well that, you know, to even say no right on red for those cars, you're going to get a huge backup of cars on Moraga then. Already there can often be backups associated with that corner. So I just wanted to put that on the record in terms of the concerns there with respect to just the overall flow.
May I? May I add a comment?
Let me just follow up. I didn't mean to suggest that it was a continual no right turn on red. I was only talking of a sign in conjunction with a pedestrian pushing a request to walk that might protect them additionally.
Yeah, and make it a red arrow flashing.
Okay, so Lynn, I think Lynn had a question?
I did. I was thinking about Danville because they have so many corners where they have the arrows and the walk people, you know, the little bodies that move their legs, and you push the button and you can't miss those. And then of course the street lights up too. Yeah. Would that be suitable at that intersection? Would that work, Mike? Hello?
So
hello?
I mean, we have the ped head, and then we added at some point, and I don't know how long ago, that changeable message sign in the middle, and that's the same idea. There is one there now. I could look into what it does, and I could look into suggested changes or the change of the sign. But as Vianney mentioned, and now I think you've mentioned, Lynn, it's basically something that reemphasizes there's a pedestrian and the driver needs to stop and give right away to that pedestrian.
People do forget they're there. You wouldn't think they would, but they do.
I would like to, if commissioners are okay with this, I would like to open up ourselves to public comment because if people have been patiently waiting. Jeff, do you want to please bring in first public comment?
Yeah, we have two hands raised. The first is telephone number ending in 102. I think I know who that might be, but I will let them announce themselves. And the second person is Megan Midman. So first caller ending in 102. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I have to unmute myself. Okay. This is Cheryl McDonald, East End of Lafayette. And before my time starts, I just want to know from Adele if you got the email from her with the attachment.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you. My comments are basically that Adele and I have been meeting with you guys last November and January. And there was a lot of discussion then about Adele's Band-Aid approach, and that would possibly be brought back. I think it was more than possibly. I think it was actually a request to staff, but I can't swear to that. That the Band-Aid approach be brought back to the Circulation Commission before we did anything on this part, because they go together, and that she had a lot of ideas that haven't really been presented to you. And it was supposed to be possibly its own agenda item, so she could tell you through more than the 3 minutes her whole plan to get it. And it has to do with Moraga all the way through. It has to do with pedestrians, bike safety, and cars. She just did a really great job, and I think it'd be worth your time before we made changes here. There is the study that I don't know anything about that's been done in Berkeley, but if that's coming back to you in a month, I think it's maybe wise that we hold off and see what they have to say as well and listen to Adele's plan. And I am also a car driver. I'm also a pedestrian, and I'm also someone with limited mobility. And I was also taught as a child by my father that it said if I had the right of way, I could be dead right. And I told that to Chief Christensen, and he loved it. That crosswalk is very, very dangerous going in that one direction from the park to the bank. It's very dangerous. Even now with the little bit of cutting back that was done, if I stand there, I cannot see until that car driver lays eyes on my eyes and we make contact. I do not go in that crosswalk. Even if I miss that light, I will not do it. I want my life. I'd rather walk 3 times with limited mobility than walk and get hurt. And I just wanted to know that, Vinny, I hear you with limited ability. I have that. And so I just wanted to put those 3 things that I'm limited mobility, I'm a pedestrian, and I drive cars. And I agree that this flow of traffic from Moraga should keep going, but this crosswalk is very dangerous. And back many years ago, that park was used as a farmer's market. They used to get a pedestrian, a person with a stop sign that would stand out in the road and let us cross for safety to get back to the other side of the street. If they had to do that then, why are we allowing pedestrians and safety now? It has not improved that much. And the only way to make it so they can really see us is to cut back that trellis. And those cars there are looking left. They're not looking right. But what makes this different from Danville and every other intersection is that trellis that makes limited visibility. If I can't be seen by them and I don't lock eyes, I don't cross. Even if I miss that light, I'll go the other direction. And that's how I always did that crosswalk. So I don't think we should make things more dangerous. I think we should bring Adele's plan back and bring all information back with whatever's happening from Berkeley with Adele's plan, and then make a decision with all information in place before we make change. It sounds like it's only another month. Thank you.
Commissioner, questions for Cheryl? Go ahead, Lynn.
I was just going to ask if maybe Adele would send her plan again. Some of these commissioners may not have it, or maybe they didn't ever receive it, but there is one. She does have one. And it maybe would be a good thing to see again.
Well, Adele has never made the presentation here. As far as I know, it was presented at the City Council. It was part of the downtown congestion study. And that when you met in November the first time, I think you had the draft, and that it was recommended that you go to the City Council's presentation and see it there. I think it's an appendix on the downtown congestion study.
Well,
I think it is.
Adele would be happy. She's just busy tonight. I'm sorry, I'm speaking for her, but we did talk many times today. She's happy to make a presentation. She's happy to send materials to you. Whatever you guys request, she will do.
Cheryl, these ideas, were they also included in Objectives 5 study? Are those the same recommendations?
Oh gosh, you're testing me. The downtown congestion study was included in. I think it was an appendix for the number 5, because Adele was part of that committee. She went there often, and so I believe it was part of that as well. But I can't swear to it. I don't have it in front of me, but I think so, but I don't know so.
Yeah, I think it was, but.
Mark,
I have a question for Mike to follow up on the comment about the farmers market and people being walked across. Cheryl, I don't know what the time frame on that, but I'm wondering if that was before pedestrian walk signs were installed.
It was before that. The thing that was put in the middle of the intersection was before that.
Yeah.
It was before that, but cars are mostly drivers are mostly looking left. When you stand there as a pedestrian, they're all looking left. You can watch them time after time. They're all looking left to make the right to get to the freeway. They're not looking for a pedestrian. It's just the nature of the beast of that intersection. And that trellis makes limited visibility.
Simply bad driving.
Okay.
Well, I'm a limited person with mobility, and I would still walk safely 3 lengths versus crossing and not getting hit by a car.
We should have a policeman there. To make sure.
Well, if you can follow full time, Mike, why don't you do it? Just kidding.
Any other commissioner questions for Cheryl?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
I too am disabled, of course, having been hit on the freeway on ramp to Highway 24. But I agree with them that I think the visibility is better and it's safer for the pedestrian. It's not as fast for the drivers and it's not as efficient for the pedestrian, but I think it is safer. So I would be willing to go with just about anything to try to work out something. I don't like the idea of taking down the trellis unless maybe we move one of the posts in a little bit or move it south a little bit.
Mr. Chair, I just want to remind you, you're in the midst of public comment. You should probably finish up with that. And then if you want to restart the conversation with the commissioners, you can, but I would finish up on public comment.
Appreciate that. Let's move, so thank you, Cheryl. Let's move to the next speaker.
Okay, coming up next is Megan Mittman, and we don't have any other speakers at this point, but if you do want to speak, please use the raise your hand function.
Hi again, I'm sticking with you. I know you guys are having a long night too. I saw this on the agenda when I was reviewing to come and support Eric, and so I couldn't help myself but wanting to weigh in on this one too. This is the intersection I talk about all the time when I talk about the visibility of where our policy decisions are in the city right now and how we are prioritizing through moving vehicle traffic over pedestrians. There is no more center of town than the place where we put our LPI fundraising meter and all of our announcements, and that's at this intersection. And closing that fourth crosswalk is a very visible choice that we're making to prioritize vehicle traffic flow over walkability and is against our general plan. We really shouldn't have ever done the pilot if we wanted to follow the general plan that says we shouldn't be doing things like this. So just really want to encourage you guys to bring it back. I think it's the right thing to do. Completely agree on the concerns for that crosswalk that we need to make it safer, but there's things you could do to make it safer rather than just to take it out. You could deal with some of these sight distance issues. You could put a leading pedestrian interval that gives the pedestrians a head start with a blank out sign that puts a no right on red just during that time that that leading pedestrian interval is on. There's all kinds of countermeasures you could look at, but be creative and thoughtful on what can you do to make it better rather than to take it out and just degrade the pedestrian walkability and safety. Your stats are better for pedestrian safety because nobody's crossing there right now during the pilot, not because it's safer. It's just made it really not friendly to pedestrians from your core downtown Civic Park to your busiest shopping center in downtown. And this is, I think, a very visible action to take to support pedestrian safety. So I just really encourage you to support Mike's recommendation. Thanks for your time.
May I add a little thing here? You know, it's only for half an hour in the morning and half an hour in the evening when schools are coming in and going out. It's not, the rest of the day, pedestrians are suffering.
Yep, 24/7 pedestrians are suffering for that
right.
small delay for vehicles.
Thank you very much. You're very helpful.
I appreciate the time, everybody.
Questions, other questions for Megan? And just to, I want to just be clear, you are supporting the staff recommendations is what you're saying?
Put the crosswalk back in. Absolutely. I support Mike's decision.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Jeff, are there any other, anybody else wants to speak?
No public comment at this time.
All right. Thank you very much. Then let's bring it back. I'd like to know if people have additional questions for Mike, as I do.
I've got one. So, Mike, has the Band-Aid approach, the items in there, been considered at all? I mean, no left turn all the way on up. There's certainly things on the surface there that seem merit consideration.
So they haven't since I became the city engineer. And Cheryl was right earlier. We had with this commission talked about bringing those back and having that as its own agenda item to go through some of those. And that probably was last fall. And we haven't done that. Obviously, we've hardly met. We haven't met since maybe February or early March. And the staff person that would have put that together isn't with us anymore. So they have some merit. They were also brought up during our downtown congestion study, and some of them did not make it to the cut that we would try. It doesn't mean we shouldn't look at particularly what you might call low-hanging fruit. I appreciate the line of sight item that you brought up. There are some things you can do. We can do the lead time. We can change that no turn on red, or yield to pedestrian crossing, or whatever we want to do. But we could also improve that line of sight for northbound travelers so they could see that crosswalk. And maybe it means taking one corner of the trellis out entirely, including the wall. That doesn't mean to remove the whole trellis, but really, if you took one corner out, I know you would improve your visibility quite a bit. And if we kept, the vines pruned back as far as we could. They were fighting for inches when they put that park in, and it's a little unfortunate that it lines up so well with, the traffic signal and the crosswalk.
It's smaller and smaller.
Yeah. So, but I agree. Megan Mittman is a ped bike expert. If we had any money, we would hire somebody exactly like her to make the case for the city, for or against things like this. You're getting her expert opinion for free because she happens to be a resident and cares about the community. So, yes. Again, it really is against the general plan at this time to prioritize vehicles over pedestrians. And that doesn't mean we should have an unsafe crosswalk either. I think that both can happen. I think that there are good comments to improve the safety of that crosswalk. I wouldn't recommend not having it. Those are the same, that's the same right turn issues you have at most every intersection. It's just that this intersection is heavily traveled, and it probably does warrant some more mechanical mechanisms to make it a little safer for the pedestrian.
Thank you.
Mike, I had a general question about pilot studies in general. when this is all along, this has been described as a pilot study. And is it common that you make some changes and then you put it back the way it was, or is that the common practice, or do you ever just like keep the pilot in, as it is forever? You know what I mean?
So certainly you can try pilot studies, and if it's working well, you can implement it as a permanent measure, and you can do something in between. It depends what your pilot study is, having to do with.
Mm-hmm. Then one other question. This is apocryphal information, but I've on several occasions been in that area, and I had seen pedestrians going around the orange barriers and crossing against the do not cross side. And so one of my concerns is pedestrian safety. Not people that have got to take responsibility for their actions, but I just want to point out, when we're talking about pedestrian safety, I've been concerned with people crossing on that side against instructions. So that's just a comment.
That is one comment we've received from the public, that people are doing that. They're crossing there anyway, and they never get a walk emblem to cross. So they're having to watch out for themselves.
Okay, so I think, are there other questions for staff? Oh, Greg?
Yeah, Mike, just a quick question. Is the city continuing to receive any written public comment on this? As I recall, it was pretty much mostly negative early on. At the public hearing last October, there were only a couple of public commenters in person, and both were in favor of it. But is there public comment now?
So I've had one recently, and honestly, I can't tell you if it was specifically from a council member, or I believe it's from a council member speaking on behalf of those that talked to that council member. So, and that's within the last 2 weeks. And I've had a different council member relay me the same information. Basically, people are talking to them and saying, when are you going to get rid of these, the water barrier, the orange K-rail that's there at this time, and allow us to cross there. So there was a lull. There was probably a period of time for months where we didn't hear from anybody regarding it. You just kind of get used to it. And there was the initial surge of response. And we even invited the response, particularly because it was a pilot study. And then now, with COVID and everything, that people, I haven't heard anything in a while. But maybe they heard it's coming back soon, or Trans-Circ is going to meet again. But within the last 2 weeks, I've heard from 2 different council members speaking on behalf of public. So I don't have a direct written letter, but just basically the question, when are you going to do something about this?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really do think we ought to try the scramble with the diagonals. I think we would like that. Having had experience with that, I think we'd love it. And I don't think it would waste time either for the cars. It's pretty quick. It's pretty efficient. They go where they're going, and it's done.
Mike, do you want to respond to that comment?
So, I mean, a scrambler it actually will delay traffic at some points of time, but there's no doubt, and I'm sure there's going to be many more studies, that it's a much safer pedestrian crossing, because just all vehicles need to stop. There's no right turns on red. There's no through traffic, and people get used to that. They also know that as a right turner, that when they get to turn right, they will have an unobstructed right. There will not be any pedestrians or bicyclists competing with them. And then they can, more carefully travel through that, perhaps at a little more speed, because there is no conflict. So the beauty of the scrambler is that you don't have the conflicting modes. You don't have a ped trying to go at the same time as a car. In the end, it depends how much time you have to allow a pedestrian. This is a large intersection. You're going to need a lot of time to get across 95 feet of crossing. So that's a long time for vehicles to all sit in all directions. But then the pedestrians are going to wait 2 minutes, and then they're going to get their let's say 45 seconds again to cross. So everybody kind of learns from it. The drivers learn that they're going to get a free unimpeded time to travel, but the pedestrians have that as well. Honestly, I have to look into what we would need to change at that intersection to make that happen. And I need that as a research project in general. You know, I don't know what components of the signal. Some of our signals have older modes of, you know, controllers and cabinets and so forth. We've updated these, so I think that it could work. It should work. I don't know what the cost would be to transfer to a scrambler system. And then you may only want that scrambler system at certain times of the day. Same conversation we had for the pathway on Pleasant Hill Road.
I have a question.
Thank you.
It's been mentioned many times tonight, and also I've been reading about it, and I have absolutely no idea, this UC Berkeley study, what is going to be studied, and will this intersection be part of whatever UC Berkeley study is doing? Do you know?
So, and I was going to speak on this a little later, but I don't know what the study is going to look like. However, this is one of the corridors I asked them to look at. I know they sent out an expert in ped bike safety, and I know that he has come to Lafayette and he's looked at 3 areas in Lafayette. Burton Valley, as we mentioned, around the school was one. The Pleasant Hill Road corridor was the other, and this Moraga Road corridor is the other. That takes care of, you know, 5 of our schools. Basically, you're looking at heavy traffic around high traveled areas and our schools. So I don't know. This was a grant study. I don't have a hammer to say your study is due at the end of September. I don't know when we're going to get back the information. A next step before a report of any kind was actually supposed to include stakeholders. There have been requests to have stakeholders, and those would include people like school representatives and perhaps a member of this commission. Some of the speakers that have spoken
Mike,
already.
Mike,
I have a
it's
list.
Jeff
of
here.
people.
I just want to remind you in the chair that this is not on the agenda, so you probably shouldn't go into too much depth on the traffic study. It's not agendized.
Yeah, it does apply to this intersection because I think people are hoping we get results back that will say either do something or don't do something here. Thank you, Jeff, for the reminder. I think the bottom line is you shouldn't wait for that study to do something here or to not do something here.
No, my reason for my question was because as we discussed the recommendation and if we put in our asks of staff on this issue, it seems to me that one of the easy asks would be to see if the city can influence UC Berkeley study to include this section. That was my question. That was the reason I was asking you, because I had no information about what was being studied. So I didn't want to discuss it, but thank you, Jeff.
Good idea.
All right, so let's get to the. Have we had enough questions and comments? Does anybody else have any other questions of staff? Okay, then let's talk about next steps here. The staff report has a recommendation to remove the basically the pilot study and go back to the pre-pilot study configuration. We have the opportunity to also make specific requests of staff to include various measures around safety and so forth. I am very much in favor of safety first, and whatever we do at this intersection, this is I think we need to keep that in mind. So I have ideas, but I want to know if other commissioners do other commissioners want to make any comments about the recommendation and or things they'd like to see?
I'm happy to weigh in. I think, we've talked a lot about the safety. Several ideas have surfaced here or maybe been raised before. We don't know at this point which ones might be the most effective, most practical, so forth. Putting, the scramble in, cutting back the trellis, putting different signs, so forth. My view is I think we'd be irresponsible to just proceed with reopening the crossing without a definitive recommendation and plan on how we're going to address the safety issue. So my idea would be to defer, and also, a year now, year and a half, drivers are used to not dealing with pedestrians there. So all the more reason we ought to have a safety program, a safety mitigation in place for the point that the crosswalk is reopened. So I would request of staff that we have a safety mitigation or safety recommendation to deploy in conjunction with reopening the crosswalk. Second, maybe it is closely related, is some kind of evaluation on the, call it the Band-Aid or the low-hanging fruit, because I think these things are kind of tied together. So anyways, I'd like to see a little bit more evaluation on the safety before moving forward. Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, I would like to see some sort of maybe a financial or at least an evaluation of a few different kinds on the cost and the advisability of the scramble system, and just leave this as we have it until we get that checked out. We can be meeting again shortly, and maybe by that time we would have an evaluation of what it would mean to install a scramble system. That would be the best of all worlds if we can swing it. It doesn't cost us $500,000. Can you hear me?
Thank you very much, Lynn. Yeah, we heard you. Thank you. Other commissioner comments, ideas?
This is
Greg?
Stella.
Oh, sorry, Stella. Go ahead, Greg.
So, I too am concerned about safety at that intersection, and I do think we need to recommend to staff and the city ways to further explore improving it. And I think the trellis is one that really needs to be looked at, because that does impede line of sight and is an issue. That said, this has been a big burden on pedestrians and bikers at that intersection for much longer than was originally bargained for, by this committee or city council. And I would be, in favor of terminating the pilot and reopening the intersection, as it was prior to the pilot implementation.
Okay, Stella?
What he said, I agree completely with Commissioner Brown. I think that we can restore the pedestrian access to this intersection and then subsequently work on improving the safety for pedestrians. I think also one point that I'd like to make is that pedestrians are not only crossing from the south side of the Plaza Park up to the shopping center, where, granted, yeah, it is a dangerous situation because people might be turning right and not see them. People are able to cross from the shopping center south, where they have very easy opportunity to look at the car straight in the eye, and cars should hopefully be seeing them coming toward that corner. So I just think that we really need to enhance the pedestrian experience, and that taking out the barriers is appropriate at this time.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments? I'm in agreement with Greg and Stella in that I'm very concerned about public safety, but I think that this is a pilot program, and it doesn't mean that we can't in the future come back and do something of this nature. But I think that my feeling is that what we should do is take the staff's recommendations and add language that asks for staff to improve line of sight issues or study and make changes to line of sight issues. Sorry?
Signage. Signs.
Yes, line of sight, signage, and generally other efforts that can improve pedestrian safety at that intersection. Because I do think that what we really want to have is multimodal access to all of Lafayette. And I'm sympathetic to Adele and Cheryl wanting to have the increased throughput. And there's a lot of things that we need to do in the city, but I think we need to focus on pedestrian safety first. That's my thoughts. So I think what we should do is, does somebody want to make a recommendation on the staff report findings? Well, I'm sorry, what the recommendations? Greg, Stella?
Okay, I'll make the recommendation then. It's to put back the way it was with better signage and better line of sight.
And look into the scramble system.
Dick, you had the comment?
Yeah, I'm a little unclear what that means. Do you not open the crosswalk until you have that better line of sight or signage? Or do you open it up and then address the visibility?
Yeah.
My thought was it was going to basically you put the pilot, you remove the pilot study, put it back to the way it was, and then ask staff to come back with some improvements, some improvements to that intersection to protect safety. But your comment earlier was, can it be delayed? Mike, do you have comments on the process, whether there's any reason why we wouldn't keep that here for a period of time while you work on mitigation measures?
Well, it's easy for me to do nothing. I think the issue has been, this has been a delayed pilot study, and the public comment we've gotten has primarily been, when are you going to open up that crosswalk again? I've taken these notes and I appreciate the commissioner input, and I agree with it on the line of sight and the safety for the pedestrian at this crosswalk, and even the right turners, and they're looking to the west rather than the east, and so forth. So, I mean, even if you were to restore this now, I would commit to looking into the lead time for the pedestrian before we opened up, so that they have a head start, so to speak. And I can do that just with my traffic technician and DC Electric as part of restoring this. So I think based on the comment and just given the conditions, I will confirm that that is in place regardless. It may have been before, but I would confirm before we even opened up the crosswalk that we would have that. I could also check on that changeable message sign. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly what it said. I think it said something like yield to pedestrian. It could be a no right turn on red that's cued with the beginning of a crosswalk. That's something fairly simple, provided I could get the sign, that could be restored with this. The line of sight issue, I can just tell you for a fact, the recommendation I need from this commission to really improve that is to remove a portion of that trellis and a column. I know this for a fact. I've looked at it. I've looked at it with the architect who helped come up with it and design it to see if we could come up with some decorative way of leaving the ambiance intact, but improve the line of sight. So, you know, if the commission as a whole feels strongly about that, regardless of the timing for opening up the crosswalk, I would suggest you make a recommendation to staff to modify it so that there's a better line of sight. And I could come back with specifically what that looks like, but I can tell you it would be removing a column and a portion of the wall.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, would most of it still be as is? Because it does give the park and the participants and whatever they're doing over there a nice privacy. Could we just?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Most of it would be as is. You can add quite a bit of line of sight by getting rid of
one column,
perhaps one column's worth.
Yeah.
At the corner.
And maybe make it look as if it was built that way.
That would be the hope.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe Larry Blodgett, I'll bet, would donate his time.
No, let's not go there yet.
Well,
may I ask,
might as well.
May I add a comment?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. There is exactly the same problem for pedestrians crossing, what's the name? Going Mount Diablo towards the park from east to west. That's right. And drivers will cut you off to no end when they make their right turns because they want to go. If you have ever crossed that from east to west on Mount Diablo and crossing Moraga Road, it's exactly the same problem. Cars will try to knock you down, cut you off. It's same for your bicycle. It's exactly the same problem. Exactly.
We had a pedestrian killed that way.
Yes, exactly. That's why there should be better signage. There should be better lead time for pedestrians. And yet there is a great line of sight. I actually bumped a car once with my fist. It was so bad. It was so egregious.
Yeah. So
there should also be better enforcement of the laws.
So Vianney, I believe you had made a motion
yes,
to support the staff recommendation,
yes,
and then through this discussion to have staff go, and correct me if this is the right way to phrase this. The recommendation is currently what Vianney had proposed is to have the staff restore the pedestrian crossings as well as pursue the mitigation measures or safety measures, including the modifications to a trellis as soon as possible.
Better signage.
And signage, yes.
Yeah.
And is there elements that, and he's also taken notes on these discussions.
Mm-hmm.
So given that that's the proposal, do I have a second on that?
Second.
There's a second. Further discussion?
I just, maybe can Mike repeat back to us what he's hearing so we're all on the same page?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I would say, end the pilot study at Mount Diablo Boulevard, Moraga Road intersection, and ask staff to restore the pedestrian crossing. And I would, in my recommendation, if I understand the commission correctly, it would be remove the pre-study word and restore the pedestrian crossing, and include immediate mitigation measures to improve pedestrian safety for this crosswalk. And I could add, which would include lead time and signage.
There we go. Yeah.
And pursue improving the line of sight for the pedestrians at this crossing, which would include trellis and decorative wall removal.
Okay.
Or partial.
And an investigation of.
I'm sorry, an investigation of a scrambler pedestrian crossing system.
So to be clear, we're agreeing here that we're going to cut the trellis back.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
If we can we see the design first?
No.
Maybe it should. You know what? Wait. You know what? Pass it past design review.
Well,
if it's ugly, we'll never hear the end of it. Pass it past design review after we decide we like something.
So that's why I'm suggesting that this commission, based on grounds of safety, make the recommendation to pursue removal of the column or the wall, because it does have design review implications, okay?
Yeah.
But as a transportation commission, you are understanding that this is more dangerous than it needs to be. And there could certainly be a decorative way of modifying this trellis to keep most of its original intent in place for the screening of the park and so forth, but still improve this pedestrian crossing.
Right.
Amen.
So, Mike, I would just modify yours to, what you said, but modification or removal of the wall and trellis.
Okay.
Not removal, not whole removal.
I would say
you can't imagine how it.
Portion.
What?
But modification or.
Yes, yeah. A little bit of it.
Okay. So I'm at this point. I think the direction to staff seems clear to me. Is there any other comments for staff? Then I'm going to call the vote here, please. We're going to do a roll call vote on my list. Greg.
Aye.
Dick.
Approve.
Lynn.
Approve.
Vianney.
Yes, approved.
Gail.
Approve.
Stella.
Approve.
And I also concur, approve. I thank you everybody for your discussion on this matter. And it's been a long pilot, but I really do appreciate Mike your perseverance on this, being down on staff, and I think and I also appreciate the public's comments because this was a pilot to help understand if it could help traffic, and I think that one of the things we're going to do this year. Hopefully, is still go back and look at Objective 5 and the other studies that have been done. We've got a lot of studies and a lot of ideas on things. Even the public comments earlier today about low-hanging fruit. So, anyway, thank you to everybody for that.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, can we have a look at Adele's plan, her recommendations? Can we work that in some way?
We will have to add that to a future meeting.
Yes.
We'll have to ask. So Mike, at some point we'll have to discuss. Mike is, and he's going to talk about this in a minute, but Mike is severely constrained in his capacity to do projects. I'm in favor of looking at all of Adele's work, and that a lot of that was included in Objectives 5. But let's save that for the next staff, because the next section, Mike was going to give an oral report on workflow and so forth. So, all right, so let's move on to 7A, commissioners' reports. My fellow commissioners have anything that they want to talk about, anything they've been involved with?
Mr. Chairman.
Lynn, yes.
Oh, just a quickie. We had talked before about updating the walkways plan. We really need to do that.
That was on our work. I think that was on our work plan for this year.
It's been on for probably 3 years.
Yes, it's long. It's been long delayed. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, but there may also be grants that are available that we're sort of not looking at.
Well, hold that thought, because Mike's going to talk about that.
Okay.
Anything other activities or reports people would like to discuss or share? Well, I'd like to share one thing. I had sent out an email to everybody about an online conference hosted by University of Oregon. It was the Walk Bike Places. And I tried to listen to a lot of those seminars. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to organize the materials that I saved. So I'll just share one brief thing. It turns out that Des Moines, Iowa has a huge bike network. And you wouldn't know it, but there's a big bike network. And they were wrestling with how do we get data on what portions of the bikeways to fix? What needs to be fixed? And they shared an interesting electric bike that had a GPS locator, you know, the cell phone, and a camera on the back of the bike pointed downwards. And then also it had a Google or a Google style 360 camera. And what they did is they had people bicycle on this pathway, and because the phones have a motion sensor, when over a bump, the camera would trigger. It would take a picture of that bump backwards, and so that would have the GPS location. And by the amount of bump, it would also record how big of a bump it was. And so then they could write around the whole network of trails, and then have data on what's broken, and they can track it over time, and then they can send people to repair things. So I will send that kind of, I'll send out links to all of my materials. But that was just one example of an interesting thing I heard. Okay. So
very clever.
Anything else? Then Mike, do you want to talk to us on your report on activities? Oral report.
Sure. So, I mean, the biggest start here is, you know, Lynn and Carl, you both kind of led into this. Lynn, you mentioned the update of the walkways plan, and Carl, you mentioned, and I appreciate this, we're understaffed again, and I'm sorry. I don't have anyone to staff this commission at all, and we've actually been understaffed in other areas as well. Since COVID, we've lost Justin. We've lost another young planner who was the likely person to step in and help with this commission. We don't have that person either. We are in a hiring freeze. The city council had staff cut out basically $1 million out of our budget this year. And for a small city, that's a significant chunk. So I do not know when we will have a transportation planner again. In the meantime, I can't keep up with what you would like me to. I would like to be able to, but I can't keep up with my other stuff too. To be honest, it's been very tight. Partly because of COVID, we're even behind on our other capital projects and other engineering and maintenance things. I'm behind on a striping project, which, you know, that's actually part of what you do as well. There's a safety measure with traffic and striping, and we didn't get a plan out. We didn't get a project out that we had just about ready to go out the door in early March, and now we missed the fiscal year. And now we've actually been cut down on how much funding I have for maintenance of striping this next year. So it's not looking good. When you talk about Adele's suggestions for the downtown congestion corridor, I don't have any time to spend on that. I don't. And the only thing that's really going to change that is more staff. So I don't know when I could get to that. But I will commit to doing some of the other things that I kind of have to do. And I mentioned here, I put TARs, transportation action requests. I don't have staff to process them. We don't have staff to go into, you know, commissions and committees and meet with residents and have public meetings and those types of things. It's just not going to happen for quite a while. However, as this commission has talked about a lot tonight, we still need to be safe. And I have gotten requests for speed humps, and those just aren't going to happen because that's a longer process. It takes a lot of public input. But I always ask, is there anything else we can do to help? Can I do some pruning to improve your line of sight? Can I improve the striping to neck down the, the travel path so that maybe the vehicles will slow down? And I have done some of those things. I've also had requests for stop signs, which I've denied just based on traffic engineering merits. They weren't warranted. They didn't have the speed. They didn't have the cross traffic. They didn't have the accidents and so forth. So that's just strictly by traffic engineering rules. It doesn't mean you would never add a stop sign where it's requested, because there are always exceptions. But most of those have been perceived problem areas, and they don't hold out. And because we don't have time to overrule that, I've been trying to make those administratively. I have added some striping. I've added some delineators at a couple sections in town where I've gotten requests. And those things would have normally come in as a transportation action request, and you probably would have seen them. But some of them I've denied, and some of them I've already had our public works crew just do. And I think, unfortunately, that's going to be the mode that we're in until we have, designated staffing. Yes, Chair DeGiorgio.
I wanted to disclose that I had a meeting with Teresa Geringer and Susan Kendall about Mike's staffing and the lack of meetings for the Transportation Commission. And so I think the City Council is aware of the staffing issues. I was going to talk later about one of the things that really resonated with me at the City Council meeting on the 10th was Jennifer Paul made a public comment that I thought was very powerful. And what she mentioned was there are, and this goes also back to Adele, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit recommendations that are out there, but the problem is there's not staff to work on it. So what I want to do is I want to challenge the commissioners, and we can't do this right now, I don't think, but I want commissioners to think about forming subcommittees, because we can have up to 3 people on a subcommittee. There's no reason why we can't do subcommittees and go through the Safe Routes to Schools, Adele's materials, and so forth, and look through those materials for what we think might be actionable, and then come back to a meeting, a formal meeting, present recommendations for the whole TCC, and give direction to staff. So I think that given the way things are going, we need to do some of this work ourselves. And so that was the comment that I had.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Years ago, we didn't have staff. We did it all ourselves. No, that's true. I remember standing at a bulletin board with chalk, and we would write down our public works projects and how we were going to find somebody to hire and how much we could pay, and you name it. We did it all.
Okay.
Hunted down grants, everything.
So, okay, Stella, you had a question?
I just want to say I'm fully supportive of the subcommittee approach, and I'd be very interested in working with some of those, particularly Safe Routes to Schools, and perhaps Vision Zero.
Okay. Dick, you had a question?
Yeah, same. I was going to ask Mike what we could do to help, and I think you're saying it right here. So fully supportive and ready to participate.
Mike, do you mind telling us what is a formal process for forming subcommittees, and do we have to do that at a public meeting, I believe?
Yes, you'd want to do that. So you'd want to maybe agendize it. I mean, I'm certainly committing to continuing to meet as we can with transportation circulation. I mean, even this, I definitely have things to come back with following this pilot study and putting the crosswalk back into place. So we need to meet again. And then you could agendize that and form subcommittees, and it'd be kind of the reverse, right? Instead of I have recommendations for you, you would have recommendations for me.
Right.
And then some of those I might need to vet out with a traffic engineer specifically, for example.
Okay. So I'd like you to do that for the next meeting, is put that on as an agenda item.
Okay.
Okay, then I interrupted you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
I would suggest that that not be all of our, I mean, we need to have staff come before us for things also.
Oh, yeah,
I would just have some of each.
Yeah, I agree.
And we don't want to be a nuisance to Mike either, if we could help it. If we're running to Mike for guidance on all the subcommittees, that's not going to help him.
A lot can be done by email. So
yeah, on the last item here, and this plays off the segue that Commissioner Hedane just gave me, and the walkways plan update. I think that will be an item that will come back. I believe actually at the last meeting you had, there was a suggestion to independently review locations that you think need a walkway where they're not on a plan already. And I will say that there is an outstanding transportation action request for its Topper and St. Mary's and maybe another road or two in that vicinity around the junior high school.
Acalanes Road. Acalanes Road was one.
So And the intent isn't to come up with those now. I'm just saying that's one outstanding TAR that I could bring back as part of that. And then if you're forming a subcommittee, it could be to focus in on that, but you'd want suggestions on locations from all commissioners at your formal meetings, and then the subcommittee to look at that. And I would include my suggestions back to the commission as well. To maybe include. So the idea would be to come up with all the locations this year. As you mentioned, that was part of one of your goals for the year, one of your work plan goals. So because then it does need to go to the planning commission and the city council for adoption into the plan. So we want to basically batch that, right? You're looking at all the different locations. We're taking input from the public. We're hearing a lot about particularly safe routes to school and improvements of walkways around there. So we want to capture all those locations that we think are candidates for future walkways.
Could I ask Mike a question?
Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, I've been wondering the last several days, as I have for I don't know how long, off and on, that block between Deer Hill and Spring Hill, have there ever been any reasonably accomplishable plans to get a walkway on that side of the street, other than when the homes at Deer Hill, I think he was proposing to do that. But do we know of any other way we could ever get a wide sidewalk in on that side?
So I don't know of any other way. It has been looked at historically, and the reason is we don't have the right of way. The reason the homes at Deer Hill was planning to do that was because it's the same owner of the property that he's developing, and they would have to dedicate right of way for a walkway as part of that project. The current Terraces project does not have the nexus to get that pathway put into place. So
that's East Bay Regional Park District, isn't it? And who else? Detmer?
So a portion of it is East Bay Regional Park District and Detmer. That's correct. So we never had the right of way. And in fact, if you drive that, you'll see how tight the utility poles are. And we don't have a full right-hand turn lane. It's a shared shoulder with bikes and right-hand turn. And the reason that was configured the way it was we don't have the public right of way.
Right, I remember. Yeah.
So,
what Tony told me was, I asked him why he didn't put in another retaining wall and keep his valuable gas station that everyone used. He said the whole damn hill is coming down. He said I put in 3 retaining walls, and he said they've all broken up over a period of time. He said I'm not doing another
just
one.
a gentle reminder, we're getting way off the agenda.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other updates staff has on activities?
No, I mean, honestly, I have a TDA grant. I mentioned this. I had a conversation with Chair DeGiorgio this afternoon. We did apply for a TDA grant. We asked for $50,000. We were awarded $35,000. And since COVID has happened and this stems from like Measure J funds, they've reduced that down to, and I'm sorry, I should have the number, but it's either $21,000 or $23,000. That's what we're going to get.
For what?
That is for the rectangular rapid flashing beacon crossing at the roundabout at Pleasant Hill Road and Olympic. So staff will still try. I think that cost, that amount of that grant will pay for the materials. It won't pay for installation. I will strive to find the installation cost within my maintenance budget, because we don't want to lose that, and we do want to put that in. So
why? What for? Why do you want that?
As a safety improvement for bicycle crossing.
We went through that at a meeting.
You recommended that we pursue that for our grant. It's been some time.
Okay, it's getting really late, so I think if there's nothing else that we need to get questions from Mike, and I really appreciate Jeff. I appreciate your help on in this meeting. This is a new format for us.
Yeah.
And, thank you very much for that, and thank you to all the public. Stella, you had a comment or question?
Sorry, I do have a question of staff. How can I find out more about this UC Berkeley study? This is the first time I've heard about it. I heard a couple of members of the public talk about it, but
I don't know a thing about it. Where
So-
can I go?
Well, I can add something there. There are a couple of articles that were in the weekly roundup about it. I can send them to you, Stella.
That would be great.
You
Thank
got it.
you.
All right, so I'm going to take this opportunity to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. It's 10:17 p.m. and have a great day tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.
Thank you all. And Jeff, thank you.
Thank you, guys.